Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Adriana's parents were overjoyed when she was born. The cute blonde-haired girl with blue eyes looked up at her mother and smiled. "Hi." The woman held her in her strong arms. "What are you doing with her?" "You've got work to do," yelled to the woman by her mother, who wouldn't let her rest for a minute. "So, what did you just give birth to?" "No one will feed the cattle. Lie down for a while, and I'll be there soon," said the new mother to her baby girl. She laid her in a makeshift crib that was made from an old stroller. Adriana's father was also a hard worker. He wasn't at home at all, always out and about. "I can't." Tiredly, Betty perked up on the stool that stood in the kitchen. "It's okay. She's got a little helper. She'll grow up soon." "She'll help you," the woman said, pointing at the still uncomprehending Adriana. "Yes, another person who was born not to live but to suffer," Betty sighed. They lived in the village. Since childhood, the girl had only seen dirty manger from which the animals ate. Every day she had to get up before the sun came up, milk a cow, and then another, then take them out to the field. When you came back, clean up the pigs, feed the rabbits and the goats and all the others. And if, God forbid, someone's mother doesn't count in the evening, it's a headache. That's how Betty grew up. "Betty, marry me." One day a young guy named Sam drove up to the house on a tractor. "Aha, what a ransom you've got on that tractor." She laughed. "I'll find the ransom. What do you want?" He set it back. The piglet was met by Betty's mother. "Oh, it's a piece of cake." The boy laughed. "So spit. Then you'll have a girl." The woman wouldn't let go of him. "Are you going to give me to my mother for a piglet?" "I won't hurt anymore," Betty asked. Tears came to her eyes. "But are you going to go or what?" The young man waited for her answer. "Let's go." The young girl waved her hand then. For some reason at that moment, she thought that a man would appear in the house would become easier. But it was only in her head. It didn't get easier. It seemed to be the opposite. It only became more troublesome. "Do you need this wedding?" grumbled her mother then. "How many things to prepare and do. Why should I be left without a party?" Betty was teaching horses then. "I'll see you tomorrow." After that feast, the woman knew that even if there was a war, the animals would have to be fed. "Why didn't I ever get up after the feast? I couldn't sleep at all. And at first light I'm already there." The cow is in shock. The girl resented her mother constantly because she did not appreciate and did not love her. That's how family life began. She cooks in the morning knee-deep in manure, and in the evening again with the cattle. And in summer she never got out of the vegetable garden. First she plants, then she starts to plunge and weed, and then it's time to dig. Any intimacy with her husband was out of the question. When it was time to sleep, she just fell on the bed and fell asleep. "Betty, when my granddaughter will give birth to me?" her mother asked. "When the time is right, then I will give birth." "You don't give me a break. All work." "Yes, work. When will you have grandchildren?" She said to the woman. "Of course, it's your mother's fault again. You have a job. Your mother is wrong. You have no children." And again she was nagging. But the woman, "All right, Mom, don't be offended." "No offense. I'm just tired." She hugged me hard. Betty mother. And here's the pregnancy thinking that at this point, everyone would get off her back and she could get some rest. But no, it didn't work out again. Even with all the chores done, feet feeling stiff, tummy tingling. "No, it's one thing. Get up. Work. What are you doing out there?" shouted her mother from the street, where she had swept the yard. "I can't. It's hard." Almost made Betty cry. We in the field objected, "Get up and work." The woman couldn't let her do anything and the others around her just lay there. Now the girl was getting up. The labor started at night. Betty asked for a doctor to be called, but the mother said she could handle everything herself. Now the daughter was lying down and looking around. She didn't know what lay ahead of her. Betty looked at her little girl. She wished her happiness and nothing else. "Betty, why are you sitting there?" "I think it's your mother who's dead." Sam came into the house. "Don't you get it? Wife, go to the henhouse and look for your mother-in-law." He gestured. Betty was scared. What if her husband was telling the truth? She opened the coop door. Mom was lying in some strange position. The woman was either kneeling or bent over, but her head was on the ground. Mom touched her Betty, and she just fell to the side. "Sam." The woman called out then. Tears sprang from her eyes. "She's dead." The husband came running. Together, they carried the woman to another place. They had to prepare everything for the funeral. The neighbors, of course, helped. No one passed by in such distress. Everyone gathered, gave Betty advice on how and what was best to do. At the cemetery, everyone stood for a long time. The whole village knew the woman as a good and working woman. No one had ever said a bad word about her in her life. "Thank you." She thanked her neighbors and Betty's mother's friends. "What are we going to die for? You're coming to help too, aren't you?" "You are." "Sure. How could I not?" Betty cried again, even though she'd thought different things about her mother when she was alive. But now that she was gone, she realized what a valuable person she was in her destiny. "What will we do without her?" I read Betty. "Did your husband ever nag you? He's tired of his wife moaning. I have to take care of the cattle and the garden. I can't do it alone." She wasn't crying anymore. She was just talking. "What do you need me for?" Husband frowned. "I didn't believe in him." The wife didn't believe in him at all. "I've never once seen you get up and go milk a cow," she said. "Examples. Here's another cow I'm taking to the pigsty. Oh, let me feed it." The husband was indignant. He realized he was wrong. "Let's sell everything and buy an apartment in the city." Suddenly, the wife calmed down. She looked at him with big eyes. "Why are you so full of hogwash? What city? What are we going to do there?" He twisted his finger at his temple. "Are we going to get a job there?" Betty was dreaming with no education and no experience. "You'll be a Belarusian there. Wait and be happy." He said it all backwards. Sam. He couldn't sit with his wife anymore. Said he went to work and left the house. "Finally, no one's harassing me. I can lie down for a while," she said to Adriana. And she was lying there, looking at her mom, and still didn't understand anything. "I'll never be like your grandmother. If you want to do something, please, it's your life, your choice," Betty told her daughter, but she wasn't allowed to lie down for long. The animals started reminding her in different voices that they were hungry too. Now Betty got up and reluctantly went to the yard, and there were heavy buckets, sacks, and other things again. Adriana grew up a bright girl. She learned early to read, write, and recite. There was no one to teach her. The kindergarten was on the other side of the village. At first her mother took her there, but then she realized that it was easier for a girl to stay at home, and in some cases she could already help. The little girl gave her mother a broom under the floor, and she herself went to work in the pigsty. Adriana thought it was a game. She did everything her mother asked her to do. "My little one, you help with the dishes." Her mother would fill the basin with water. Adriana just splashed it around like that. She grew up running around with the other kids outside. "You don't think about anything at that age. Adriana, come home." Betty realized she was turning into her mother, and she didn't want to be. She worked all day long. Her hands were like nothing else. They were as rough as a man's. "Adriana, it's time to go to school." Daddy went to town, bought her some pens and pencils. The girl was so excited about it all. She couldn't wait to be at the desk. Studying wasn't easy. Some things the girl just didn't understand. There was no one to explain. The older boys and their parents went to the city. From there, they brought back different magazines. Adriana looked at the beautiful girls in the pictures and dreamed that her life would be exactly the same. She would grow up, go to the city to study, find a rich fiancé, and leave this village forever. And something spilled. Can't you help your mother sometimes? No, you can't. Feet to the ceiling. They don't want to do anything. Betty asked her when Adriana was in high school. Mom, leave me alone. I'm not gonna do anything. I used to help when I didn't realize it. Now I just don't want to. Her daughter answered her. What do you mean, I won't? Who will? You eat, you drink. Where do I get it all? There was a woman standing over her. I don't know. You can buy everything now. Go to the store. You can get eggs, meat, potatoes, curling her fingers. Enumerated and then waved away Adriana. Ah, I'll show you how to buy. You'll go to the vegetable garden now and feel it all. Her mother swung a towel at her. What are you doing? She jumped up from the couch. A girl. So they could run around the room for a while. Adriana didn't do well in school. She thought she'd finish school and then she'd see what she could do next. She kept looking at beautiful pictures, which she liked so much since childhood. The girl dreamed a lot, and she didn't know what she wanted to be. Just rich, happy, and perhaps to live far away from here. Adriana, let's go to the disco. The girls came in after her. Now she was finishing expanding. The girl, she was prominent blonde hair, big blue eyes. Legs, as they say, from the years. Except she didn't have any outfits or jewelry. But she wasn't desperate. She did it all by herself on magazines, learned to sew, remade herself from the old things of her grandmother and mother, dresses, shirts. And today she wore a new outfit she'd just finished yesterday. And where do you get it all from? Her friends wondered. There is no more, she told them in response and laughed. Her mother only sighed, and she realized that she had been like that herself. Why don't we even have a computer at home? Adriana asked her mother, even smirking. We don't have a lot of things. We need money for everything. So we have to earn it. Adriana said smugly. You, like Betty, looked at your daughter with tired eyes. Why is that a problem? The girl wondered then. It isn't for you. The woman was amused. Wait, we have chickens, goats, cows, pigs. And that's all money. Curl your fingers. Adriana. Oh, really? Who needs it? Your milk? If everyone here has so much of it, it's a shame a mother can't even be understood by her own daughter. Let me go to the highway and sell it all every day, the girl suggested to her. The woman agreed well then. She herself once wanted to earn money like that, but it didn't work out. Now, while school was on vacation, Adriana got up with the rooster. She would pack a huge bag and ride her bike to the highway. There were lots of cars. They stopped, but almost all of them were asking for something ready to go. The girl realized that it was useless to stand here with meat. Milk and eggs were taken, but no meat. Mom, let's make some meat. Let's make some cheburek, and piroshki can be made of cabbage and potatoes, she suggested to the woman. Betty thought about it. Why do drivers who have gone somewhere far away need to buy raw meat or eggs when they just want a snack? And here stood a young girl with pies. Here you go, cheap and surly. I realized that my daughter was talking, so I agreed with her. Well, daughter, I didn't even think you had such an entrepreneurial spirit. You know how to do everything yourself. Do it. The woman let her. Betty was willing to help. Then what good is Adriana if all she does is sell? Any fool can do that. And you go for eggs, forget meat, mushrooms, potatoes, cabbage. Then you'll be in business for sure. The girl herself didn't realize how she got involved in all this. Adriana was getting up even earlier now. She had a lot to do. She has to bring in the dough, stuffing, cooking, and then wait for everything to take place and get ready. She'd arrive at the track with bags full of pies with different fillings. Everything was sold out in a matter of hours. I couldn't be happier. Thank you. It's delicious. She already had regular customers who often traveled here for work or just for business. The girl was interested in bookkeeping. She had to keep a tally. How much is minus? How much is plus? So she learned the basics from some old books from the library, and with the help of the cashier Baba Olai. She realized that the cost of her pies, especially with cabbage, potatoes, and eggs, was a penny. But the profit was tangible. Adriana began to save. She opened a special deposit in the bank, where she transferred all the money. She had almost no expenses, just flour, sugar, and salt. It wasn't much. "Mom, this is your half, this is mine." She gave the woman the money. What a daughter. Why didn't you say something before? Betty realized that now money was starting to appear in their family. The woman wasn't going anywhere. She put it in a box so she could just get it out when she needed it. "And you said you didn't have it, and you couldn't earn it," Adriana replied in a businesslike manner. She was flattered that she was still in school and already earning money for the house. Finally, her mom started to praise her. "All quiet, study if you like." The woman left. She was really happy that her daughter was doing something. The girl was so much into her work that she had no time for anything else. The bookkeeping took her like a whirlwind. All those bills, kids, bad loans. Just keep up with the communications, the balance sheet. Now she didn't know what she wanted to do more. School was ahead of her. But Adriana didn't want to go back because she was already independent. Why teach her anything else? "Have you forgotten that you have a ruler on your nose?" Mom asked. They wanted to go to the city to buy some upgrades for September 1. But Adriana was busy, so Betty didn't bother her. "No, arranging for a neighbor to drive to the track for me," Adriana replied. She was so reluctant to leave her lucrative business. "Okay, I'll stay out of your business." Mom was leaving again. She didn't make her daughter do anything at all now, because she realized it was hard enough as it was. She gets up when it's still dark and starts fiddling with her dough. What can I say? Good for her, bringing money into the house. Betty will do it herself somehow. The neighbor's name was Sofia. She lived alone. She was in her 30s. I don't know what she did for a living, but she didn't work. That's why Adriana decided to go to her. She was ready to do everything herself, and all she wanted to do was take it to her and make it happen. "Sofia, hi." Adriana came to her. She knew the girl, but now for some reason she was worried. "Come in," she called her. That neighbor liked to have visitors, old or young. She was always alone, and this was some kind of entertainment. The girl came in. She told the neighbor she liked the idea, and according to Adriana's calculations, Sofia would make a decent income. She agreed. Adriana was generally happy when school started. She was up and about. Early in the morning, she would make the dough and take it to Sofia, and she would go to the track in the morning. And things were going well. Like today, Adriana came to her neighbor, and they counted together how much they had sold and what they had earned from it. That's great. There are a lot of customers who like different hotcakes. She put the proceeds on the table for her. The bills were of various denominations, but Adriana never missed a single one. 2 part gave Adriana's honestly earned Sofia money. She realized that if she didn't share, then nothing at all in life would work out. She came home, counted there was enough for a TV. But the girl dreamed of a computer or a laptop. She had already spent home. Internet was the only thing missing right now. She decided that she would go and buy one, and she wouldn't listen to anyone, and put the rest of the money in a deposit until later. What do you need it for? You'll go to school there and buy it. Betty was puzzled. She didn't understand anything about modern gadgets. What are you talking about? Young people have their whole life there today. The girl realized that her mother had never encountered such things. Well, I don't know. Betty just shrugged his shoulders. 11th grade was coming to an end. The income was decent. Adriana could afford more than just a laptop anymore. "I'm going to the city this weekend," she told her parents. "Good, you are already independent." Her mother agreed with her. "I will buy myself a dress for graduation and a laptop," said Adriana, and dreamily, "Your money, you buy what you want." Her mom didn't understand why she would spend money on an unnecessary item. Adriana waited for this day. She was not often in the city, and went there only once a year with her parents, and that was when she needed to buy something. the rest of the time she was in the village. But it all went. She kissed Betty and left the house. And life was very different in the city, even though it was small. Adriana went shopping, looking at the dresses there, the shoes. She liked everything so much. She realized that she couldn't buy it just because she had nowhere to wear it. "Could you show me this dress?" she asked the counselor. Yeah, now she was surprised. I mean, it was at the very end. They thought they wouldn't sell it to anyone. Oh, it's beautiful. In Adriana's eyes, it was bright, lush. "What do you think?" The girl seller looked at her very well. "That's it. I'm taking it." She didn't even bother to look at the other dresses. "Great choice. They'll probably give me a bonus for selling it." The consultant thought to herself, "Thank you." A happy Adriana walked out of the store. After that, she went to the hardware store, where she spent a long time choosing something. But because she didn't understand anything, she couldn't make up her mind. "Hello, my name is Michael. Can I help you?" A young man approached her. "Yes, I need a good laptop," she said. "Let's see." He went down the aisles of technology. "Okay, waiting," nodded Adriana. "This is a great one. You can play and work on it." The young man held the box in his hands. "Super, its price is good." The girl could not believe that he was holding in his hands what he had dreamed of for so long. "Then let's go to the cash register." He showed her the direction. Adriana was happy. It was now possible to drive home in front of the store. She saw a cute cafe and decided to go in there. She walked in, took a seat, and placed her order. The prices here were not that expensive. The girl was just enjoying herself. "Hi." She heard a man's voice behind her back, while the girl turned in her head, flashed 1,000 thoughts. Who could it be? And when she saw Michael, she smiled back. "What are you doing here?" Simply, she asked him. "I came to have lunch at home. I have no time, and it's far away." He sat down across from her. The consultant from the store was also not timid, although the girl did not let him. He still took a seat at her table. "Do you mind?" He suddenly came to his senses when he had already ordered. "Why are you laughing? It's more fun then." The girl did not think that so soon she would have new acquaintances in the city. "I'm Michael, you already know. What's your name?" He looked at the strange girl. "Adriana." She laughed again. "Nice to meet you. Did you come from somewhere?" he asked, because she looked a little different from the way city people dressed. Yes, she told him the name of the village, which to the young man was just an empty sound. "And now it makes sense," he smirked. "What do you understand?" She looked at him surprised. "That I've never seen you before." He found something to say. They sat and chatted. An hour went by without a second thought. "Well, I have to go to work." He got up from the table. "Come on, call and write." She waved him off. She and Michael exchanged phone numbers. After that, the girl went to the bus station. She had to get back. How was the trip? Her mother greeted her perfectly, and she put her shopping on the table. "Wow, daughter, how much did you save?" The woman wondered. What's the difference? She didn't want to talk about it. Adriana wanted to sit down at the table, turn on the new appliances, and try them out. When the girl did all that, it didn't work, so she dialed Michael's number. "Hey, listen, I can't figure this out." She started telling him about her problem. The guy explained everything. And now Adriana's online. "Thank you." She thanked him. "You're welcome." He disconnected. The girl was so sucked in. Was it that she couldn't finish until the morning, browsing different sites? "Adriana, what are you doing up?" The mother got up in the morning to take care of things. "Oh, Mom, wait." She waved it away. The girl saw that it was possible not to go constantly to the highway, and not to stand there, and just open a tent or a stall. She sat down and began to think. Then she remembered that in their center grandmothers sometimes sell seeds. They have iron trays. I wish she could get one of those. "Father, could you make me a sip like in the center?" She asked her father. "It's easy. Only iron is needed, he said, and where to get it. Enterprising Adriana was ready for anything. We could go to a doctor. Does he take anything? Yes, he does, the man suggested. By lunchtime, Adriana was outside Jack's house. Hi. She'd known the man for years. What are you doing here? He was surprised. Usually different men with iron came to him. Mitya, help. I need iron to weld a tray like the one in the center. Adriana started asking him. She was making such a sad face. What a conversation. Come in. He let her into the yard. There was a lot of stuff here. Adriana didn't understand much of it, and Jack couldn't tell her. He was just a receiver, not an expert. So the girl ran after her father. He immediately found 4 long sticks of iron. Then some other little things. Adriana didn't understand what would come of it, but the parents seemed to know everything. Can I help you? The daughter asked him. How can you help me? The man laughed. The girl saw that in his spare time he was pounding something with a sledgehammer and dumping with a machine. A week later in the vegetable garden stood such a tray, as if it was brought from the factory yesterday. Now we will install it, and then we can insulate it, promised her father. Cool. The girl was happy. The school graduation was over. Adriana wore the brightest and most beautiful dress. It was in the city. It was already out of fashion. But here in the village it was the most fashionable. Afterwards, many of the boys went to the river, others went somewhere else. But Adriana didn't have time for that. She came home, surfed the internet for a while, and then went to sleep for a couple of hours. Together with her father on the tractor, they brought the new equipment to the track, put it in a place that would not disturb the drivers. Now Adriana had her own spot where she could stand and sometimes even sit down. We should buy a dough machine, she told her mother. Do whatever you want. It's your business. The woman laughed. Michael, hi. She called her friend in town. Oh, how are you? He was happy to hear from her. Hey, do you guys sell dough machines? She asked him. Sure. He was willing to help. Can I ask you something? She said sweetly. Try. He didn't mind her requests. Could you buy it and bring it over? You will come to me on the weekend, and I'll show you everything here. You'll have a rest, cried his girlfriend. Great. It's been a long time since I went to the countryside. He was even happy. The girl was waiting for the weekend to come. Not only that she will get a new appliance, but also the guy will come. Which, by the way, she liked. Saturday, she went to the station where she was supposed to meet Michael, and she told her mom that she had a guest coming. She was at home getting ready to meet him. Adriana waved hello when he was still on the bus. But it's a long drive to you. He climbed out of the soulful cabin. It's okay. She looked at the large box in the young man's hands. Yes, checked everything. Everything works, he vouched for it. When the young men came home, Adriana immediately began to show and tell what they have here and how. Everything was so interesting. It was as if he was in the village for the first time. You have not been on the street yet. The girl told him. They ate. Then Adriana took him to see the local sights. Man, you are lucky to live in such a place. The boy admired the nature. Yeah, all you city people want to go to the countryside, but you only spend a few days here. You know how hard life in the countryside is. It's like Adriana was complaining. Can I come next weekend? Michael asked her. Why not? She looked embarrassed. For the first time in their acquaintance, the couple walked around all day. And in the evening, tired, they returned home. Did you like it? Adriana asked him. Very much. He was telling the truth. What was the best part? Adriana was curious about everything. You. He took his eyes aside. Are you kidding? She blushed again. No, why would I do that? Michael was looking at Adriana now. When did you realize it? They were sitting in her room on the bed. There in the city, when I first saw you, I thought you had fallen from the moon. He began to tell the girl the truth. And then what changed? That wasn't very nice to hear. I don't know. You're so open, so pure. He couldn't find the words. He was embarrassed. She wanted to get up, but the guy took her hand and pulled her to him. Adriana. His face was so close she was trembling. "Can I kiss you?" Michael asked. "Try." She closed her eyes. It was the first kiss in a girl's life. It turned out to be very pleasant. She opened her eyes and looked at the young man. "Will you go out with me?" he asked. Yes, she wanted to nod, but didn't have time to do so. The boy's lips connected with hers again. "Children, come to the table," her mother shouted. Now Adriana felt like her face was on fire, and her mother was about to notice what they were doing here. "Let's go." Michael lifted her out of her seat. Aha! She stood up, walked over to the mirror. Nothing about her appearance had changed. After dinner, the young people secluded themselves in the room again. "Are you sleepy?" Adriana asked Michael. "Not really," he said. "Maybe we'll go for another walk." If during the day the girl was in a fighting mood, she wanted to show and tell her boyfriend everything. Now it was romance. "Let's go." There was nothing to do anyway. They left the yard and went straight to the river. Michael was holding her hand. It was so nice. By the river they sat and kissed. A spectrum of new sensations opened up for Adriana today. Then they came home, and both of them went to bed at night. The girl felt the young man hugging her. It was unusual, even when she had to get up to start the dough. She didn't want to disturb him. It was the first morning she'd slept in, as if she'd overslept. "What are you doing asleep?" her mother asked her. "I don't know." Probably because we were out all night last night," the girl answered. She realized that now she was not free. She had a young man with whom she was ready to go anywhere. In the morning, Michael was surprised when he did not find the girl around. He went to the kitchen, but there was no one there either. The guy made coffee, sat down, and waited for someone to come. He woke up. A woman came through the door. "Yeah. Where are you all?" He asked the question that had been plaguing him for almost an hour. "Adriana." "At work, and we're out in the yard doing chores," she answered simply. Which job was he most interested in? "She'll be here in a minute to tell you." Betty thought, why pry into the youth's business? If Adriana didn't tell him anything, then it was necessary. Adriana returned an hour after their conversation with her mother. "Hi." He came over and kissed her. "You what?" "It's a good thing Mom's not around." Adriana was scared. "You smell like pies." Michael even squeezed his eyes shut. "Do you want me to make you some?" she asked me. "Who did you cook for before?" The guy tensed up. "You what?" "I sell them on the highway." She laughed. "Now I see where you got such capital." He was happy too. "Okay, if you want to get home tonight, you'll have to move." She looked at her watch. "What's later?" "There's no bus." He didn't feel like leaving. "No, not until early tomorrow morning." The girl knew the schedule by heart. "I see. Then he should go to work tomorrow." He sighed, not sad. She came close to the guy. She wanted to kiss him so badly. But her mother was going to be entering the house any minute. "It's okay," he squeezed her hand. Adriana saw Michael off. She waited with him for the bus. And here she couldn't help but kiss him goodbye. He got on the bus and waved. It felt so good. Now she knew she had a boyfriend from the city. It was several times faster to work with the dough machine. Now she didn't have to stand around and waste time kneading it. "Daughter, are you planning to go to college?" the mother inquired. "No. Why would I?" She made up her mind a long time ago. A man with an education can be useful anywhere. In her time, Betty didn't get anything either, but she didn't complain now. Who needed her diploma for cows? "Mom, I'm doing fine. And if something goes wrong, I'll think of something new." The girl was sure of herself. "Okay, I'm not bothering you." The woman saw that she was only annoying her daughter with her talk. Adriana now lived from Saturday to Saturday when her lover arrived. They would go out in the morning. Adriana would go out to trade and Michael would sleep at her house. "Adriana, are you two dating?" asked her mom quietly in the kitchen while her boyfriend was still awake. Yes, she blushed because she was embarrassed in front of her mom. Good boy. Hang in there. His woman was pleased. Where shall we go today? The young man asked Adriana. Shall we go to the forest for mushrooms? She suggested. Good. I haven't been in the woods in 100 years. Michael was even happy about it. They wandered through the woods, stopped in some places, kissed. I love you. It's only been a few weeks. How are they dating? And Michael was already saying those big words. And I love you. She was saying to him, maybe we'll get married. Michael held her hands. The fact that it had only been so short a time. After we first met, she rounded her eyes. And you still don't get it. It's clear to me. He was taking her to his place. Michael, what are we going to do then? She used to dream about the city so she could move there. But now she realized that if she left, she'd be out of money. What do you say? He turned away. What am I supposed to say? Adriana really didn't understand it. In the city. I live in a rented apartment. If you want, we can go there. He didn't know what she expected of him either. No, I think we should stay in the village. She disagreed. The girl. Then I'll be out of a job. He bowed his head. You'll be helping me. Do you know how much business there is here? She was sure of it. Okay with the offer. I'm serious. But where we're going to live is something we need to think about. Let's not go any further. The couple went home with full pictures. Tomorrow we can bake mushroom pies, Adriana said. Do you want me to help you? Asked the young man. And if you don't mind, and if you want to, why not? And she didn't refuse any help. The next day, the guy saw what his future wife was really doing. They got up at 500 hours. Adriana set the dough to start, and she herself started on the stuffing. Paris, please, cabbage. That's how you did it on Michael. Aha. He never got up that early. That's why everything was falling apart for him right now. He almost cut himself twice. Why are you so awkward? Adriana asked him. You know, I'm not used to getting up so early, Michael told her. Oh, how gentle we are. The girl laughed back. After that, the young man and the girl loaded full bags of pies and drove to the highway. This is where you work. Michael, that was interesting. Yeah, is there something you don't like? Adriana didn't understand why the young man was acting like that today. I'm sorry, I'm fine. I just didn't sleep well tonight. He was watching different cars drive up and buy pies from his girlfriend. Do you want to try one yourself? Adriana suggested that he start selling them himself. No, what are you doing? I'm not gonna make it. For some reason, that's what he thought. Well, maybe you could at least try. She wouldn't calm down. Adriana, stop it. Even though it was his thing, he was embarrassed. You know, Michael, money can't smell. Adriana turned away. It was like she was offended by him. What's wrong with you? What are we going to fight over nothing? He went over to the girl and hugged her. You don't understand. This is my job. I take it very seriously. Adriana already regretted that she decided to show him everything today. Okay, I have the exact same job. I'm sorry I didn't get it. That's it. No more pies. She showed him the empty bags. Great. Home, then. Michael didn't understand why he had said all those things to the girl. They drove home. Adriana laid out on the table the money they had earned today. Michael looked at it all and saw that it was more than he could earn in a week. Wow, he whistled. What did you want? I wouldn't just do this for nothing. Adriana looked at her young man and she was happy. Whatever was he saying? The young man had to leave again. He didn't want to break up, but no one had canceled his work in the city. And again, they stood at the bus station, hugging, kissing. Will you write when you arrive? Adriana asked him. I will. He held her tightly against him once more. Michael worked for a week, and so did Adriana. They missed each other, but neither of them could decide where they would be better off. The girl insisted on the countryside. While the young man didn't want to leave the city. What does Michael say? Mom asked her daughter that she wanted to stay in the city. She answered, and her expression was very sad. I see you're against it. The woman felt sorry for her daughter. She didn't know why. She just worked hard. Now she was calling a young man to her, but he didn't even want to go to a ready-made house. What's in there then? But she didn't say anything out loud. Let them live as they are, or then she would be the last one. I don't want to talk about it yet, the girl admitted to her. For the rest of the summer, Michael and Adriana lived like that. He constantly came to her on weekends, and sometimes she went to him. Well, we're only going to see each other on Saturday. How did she put the question seriously? What do you suggest? He couldn't understand what Adriana wanted from him. Move to the village or organize your schedule so that you could work there during the day and come here in the evening. They both knew it was impossible. But it wasn't good either. Okay, I'll agree to move to the country. Somehow Michael agreed right away. And once he'd made up his mind, it was surprising Adriana. He'd recently really compared his spending on traveling back and forth. Thought he'd find something here. Good, then you'll help your father insulate my place now, she told the young man without any problems. He agreed immediately. From that moment, normal life together began. Should we rent a house? Adriana asked her mom. Do you not have enough space here? Didn't she understand? No, but we might be shy. The girl knew that wasn't true. But she wanted to be alone, not with the whole crowd. And live then. Why waste money? Didn't let Betty's daughter go. Michael, together with Adriana and her father, had gotten over everything quickly. It was warm and dry now. She bought herself a lot of appliances. Now she hardly did anything herself, with more and more pies every day. Who would have thought she'd turn out so much on some pies? Said the mother to her future son-in-law. The young people applied. They had to register in the city. They traveled there the day before, and already in the village local cult workers arranged an off-site registration, and then sit-downs in the club. They took away all the chairs and put big tables there. The bitterness was all that could be heard throughout the village. Adriana was happy. Sure, things in her life hadn't turned out as beautifully as she wanted, but that was good too. She continued her work, and Michael began to help his father-in-law. Does your work make any difference? His wife asked him when he got home. What good is it? I wish we'd stayed in town. There was work there. He said. The young man was in a bad mood. What are you saying? Adriana was afraid to talk about the city. She didn't want to go there at all. Nothing. He knew she wouldn't go anywhere with him because she was fine here. You live in the middle of nowhere. You don't need anything, and the money piles up. One day the men came home from work. When Michael entered the room, Adriana smelled alcohol on him. What are you doing? It's not like you haven't tried it at all. She couldn't believe her husband would do such a thing. Your father offered me a small drink. I didn't refuse, he replied abruptly. All right, come on, go to bed. She threw back the blanket on the bed. After that, Adriana seriously considered renting a house. She realized that if her husband drank with her father, one time would not stop there. The very next day, she went to the head, asked if there were any houses available. Adriana, I thought you were coming to see me after the wedding. A man said to her, should I have? She got a little nervous. Sure, we have a cabin. I can give it to you. He laughed. How do you mean allocate it for free? She couldn't believe they were giving anything away for free at this time. Yeah, but it's on village land. You can do whatever you want with it, just don't sell it. And of course, if there's an emergency, you'll have to pay money for it. The man in front of her said, I'm in. She signed all the papers, came home. Michael, we're moving, the girl said. What do you mean? Where? Mom couldn't believe it was actually happening. Turns out we were supposed to get a house. We didn't know. She looked at her mom. Did she know? I hear you. Betty sat down in her chair. She wasn't in the mood. What are you so upset about? I didn't go to the city. I went next door. Adriana was sure that things would get better for them now. The things that weren't much loaded into the tractor cart, and they were able to move everything in one go. The cabin was small. It was cozy inside. The room and kitchen Adriana and her mom had already had here. They cleaned everything, hung it up, and arranged the curtains. "How do you like our house?" Adriana asked her husband. "It's fine." Michael hadn't been himself lately. "Listen, we have a lot of men who go on shift. Maybe you could get a job there." She gave him an idea. "Why, I don't mind. And the money's good. And you don't have to worry about it." He's kind of excited about it. "Then go to the breakfast bear, who lives next door to your mother. I'll check with him." Adriana. It was hurtful to hear the words eyesore. Well, he put his arm around his wife, and they went to bed. The first night was uneasy. The neighbor's dog barked so much that no sleep came. But fatigue took its toll, and Adriana and her husband fell asleep. "But I've made the arrangements. I'll send the documents tomorrow." And a month later, Michael spoke joyfully. "You say that as if you're fed up with me." She looked at him resentfully. "It's just that I'm tired of sitting around doing nothing. That's why I was excited about new prospects." He kissed his wife. "Good, if that's the case." She looked up at him, her eyes slightly moist with tears. "Michael will be leaving now. Move back in." "What are you going to do there?" Betty said to her daughter. "No, I'm comfortable. No one bothers me." And I didn't agree with her either. Adriana. "Well, live alone." The mother said angrily. "Why are you taking offense again?" Her daughter came over and hugged her. "It's okay." At that moment, the father entered the house, who was out with his friends again. "Daddy." And again the daughter looked at him. And he didn't say anything and went to the couch. "How am I supposed to be alone here? No one to help me at all." Betty started wailing. "I don't get it. Adriana, you used to be the go-to guy. And now you can't wait." Betty cried. Adriana came home. Michael had set the table. She stood there looking at all this beauty. "Did I forget that today is a holiday?" she asked him. "No, I just thought I'd glorify it by going away," he said cheerfully. "I feel like I'm seeing off the bride's son." Adriana sat down on a chair. Something was beginning to displease Michael again. How was she reacting to the fact that he was just excited about his new job? That evening they sat well at the table, discussed everything, and even imagined when Michael would bring the first paycheck, where they would spend it. "I'd like a vacation somewhere," she said. "I wouldn't say no to that either." He took her hand. "Then we'll have to get the passports." Her eyes were already wide open, as if this wasn't going to happen anytime soon, but tomorrow. "I think we'll have to save up a little and then we'll go," her husband told her. According to Adriana, it was good. Michael had left. Now he wouldn't be home for a month. Adriana had no time to be bored. She decided she was going to make her turkey place into some sort of diner. Now there were not only pies, but tea and coffee. Drivers could drive up, buy, and then enjoy a rotting beverage and a tasty pie in the parking lot. "Did you wait so long outside the house for her?" Her mother decided to go out not just in the morning, but all day. She told me that she had bought a microwave and could heat right there. "I'm visiting." The woman's a little miffed. "Why don't you come in? Do you know where the keys are?" The daughter was surprised. "I don't know. I didn't dare without you." And only now mother and daughter entered the gate. It was beautiful at home. Adriana had been cooking all morning. The mother sat down at the table. She sighed. Something had happened, the daughter guessed. "Your father." She raised her eyes to Adriana. There was a small bruise under one of them. What had gotten into him? She didn't understand. "I don't know. Every day with her friends lately." Betty sighed again. "And how you put up with all this? I have kicked you out a long time ago." Adriana got up and put the kettle on the stove. "I can't. He's the boss," the woman reasoned. "Yes, he is." He only poured one name, and Adriana poured tea. They sat at the table with Mom some more. And then the woman got ready to go home. It would have stayed. The girl suggested it. No, I have my own house. Betty left the house. Adriana sat down on the couch and decided to write a message to her husband. She had already written to him, but either he didn't read them or they didn't reach her. He didn't pick up the phone either, no matter how many times she dialed him. All right, if you don't want to talk, we won't talk, she said and put the phone aside. Aside from that, the girl had a lot of other things to do. She filled out the necessary forms to apply for passports, sent them, and waited for a reply. Afterward, the girl opened pictures and stories about the beaches and hotels that are on the sandy seashore. How beautifully set, she and considered everything that came across. Michael wrote that he was coming in 2 days. It was such a joy. Adriana immediately began to prepare. And she boiled some collards, because her husband loves it. After that, she put the vegetables on the salads. When Michael opened the door, there was a table with many different genders waiting for him. "Hello, darling." His wife ran up to him. Only now she felt how much she missed him. "Adriana, come on." He was glad to see his family too. But what's the story? They sat down at the table. On such an occasion, Adriana, even with a bottle of wine. "Everything's fine, only we're very tired. That is, all the time I want. And you are not enough," he laughed. "You get the job done." She stood up and put him in a plate of salad. "Of course, there is nothing complicated," he began to say with his mouth full. And the pay, as she watched in anticipation. What was her husband going to say to her now? Oh, and he forgot the most important thing. He tapped himself in his pockets and then pulled out an impressive wad of money. Wow, she looked at them. I was also a little shocked when I saw how much they wanted to pay me. The husband admitted, "Listen, we will definitely fly somewhere." And from the next paycheck, the girl was happy. By that time, the passports should have been ready. Of course, everything for his favorite wife. He put his arm around her and led her towards the bedroom. "And what about dinner?" She looked at the table. "It's not going anywhere," her husband whispered in her ear. Afterward, they sat and talked for a long time. Michael told where they traveled, what they did there. At first, Adriana was interested, but when once again he started talking about some bushes, she got bored. "I completely forgot that you have to get up early tomorrow." He had already spoken today. She showed him the clock. "Let's go to bed then." And they retired to the bedroom again. The next day, they went to her parents' house, went for a walk, and that was all after Adriana came home from work. Can you believe it? I looked at the calendar today, and it's time for me to go again. Michael told her tonight. Yeah, I thought about it too, that the month went by too fast. It was sad to break up. But to tell you the truth, Adriana was so tired this month. She had to work, and then she also had to go out with her husband. Now that he was leaving, she wanted to work in peace, miss him, and meet him with renewed vigor. While Michael was away, the girl booked the vouchers. She could not be happy that the passports came on time. When Michael was home, the last day, they went and got them. And now Adriana was choosing a place where they would rest like white people. Adriana herself does not know why her choice fell on the Arab Emirates. She had looked at so many places, but she did not see such beauty as there. It was decided unequivocally that they would fly there. Hello was home again. "Michael, darling, let me tell you right away, we only have 2 days to get ready." "Well, you do, because I'd already got everything ready." She pointed to a room where there was a huge suitcase. "Did you put a down jacket and a fur coat in there?" Surprised husband. "Well, that you start there all the essentials." She took offense. "All right, I'm just kidding." He kissed her. Today they were not to suitcases. But all the next day, Michael wondered what besides underwear and a towel he could use in there. Michael and Adriana were only at the airport, but they already liked everything. The girl only sighed. How nice it would be for them in a few hours. She began to annoy her husband with her talk about Arabs. "Why? We're going to this country. We should know a little about it." she said indignantly. After the airplane, in which it was so uncomfortable to fly all these hours, and finally they are standing on the ground. Here we are, loudly shouted the girl. Now they will definitely say that the village has arrived, whispered in her husband's ear. Why are you embarrassed of me? Asked him the girl. Just do not yell. Everything will be fine. Asked her Michael. Okay. If you want, I can keep quiet at all. She turned away. He could not believe it. He saw their bus, called Adriana, and they went along with the other tourists. The hotel was cool, just like the girl had seen in the picture. They were quickly settled in and now could fully enjoy the sea and sun. To the beach, the wife asked her husband. Maybe to the bar first. He looked at her. Okay, you go to the bar, and I'll go to the beach. She took a towel and left the room. Michael never showed up at the beach that day. Adriana was not upset about it. She was fine on her own. She was sunbathing in the sun and not living in the warm waters of the sea. Everything was wonderful. In the evening, when Adriana returned to the room, her husband was singing on the bed, sprawled out stargazing. Drunk, she said in her heart. After that, she took a shower and went downstairs to see what was going on by the pool music was playing. Adriana was just enjoying the evening. The next day, they took a boat tour. The husband, unfortunately, couldn't go on it, but Adriana went. It was worth the money. Hello. A local man approached her when they were already on deck. Hi, said cheerfully. Adriana, you are all alone. He spoke Russian well, but there was a strong accent. As you can see, she waved her hands. After that, this man came up to her more than once, complimented her, said beautiful words. Adriana just melted from how good he was and how he spoke. I wish I had a husband like you said. She said directly to the man's face. Such a woman should be happy. He sang like a nightingale. Your words to God's ears, she said quietly. Let's meet tomorrow. They suggested it. Why am I always alone anyway? Let's do it. Adriana was sure that her husband would be at the bar again today. Then we have a deal, Adriana. The man helped her down to the ground and climbed back up. All the men drove back to the hotel and Adriana with them. Just as she had anticipated, the husband was back at the bar. Do you want to sit here all day? She approached him. What do you suggest? Everything here is free. Michael was already pretty drunk. Okay, I'm not interested. She turned around and went to her room to change. Adriana waited for him to follow her, catch up with her, apologize. But that didn't happen. The morning was sunny. Adriana put on a transparent nika that reached her knees and went to the beach where she had an appointment. Hello, Queen, and was already waiting for her there. Hello, she blushed. It felt good to her to be treated like that by him. He took her hand and led her away from the beach. Where are we going? She asked. You'll see. He was still holding her hand. The girl felt such masculine strength coming from him. She could not believe that such men even existed. After a while, the red roofs showed themselves, but it was not quite clear what it was. It turned out to be a small cafe right on the beach. Fastened carpenters stood in the middle of the water above them. And there were those brightly colored roofs. Joe helped Adriana down. They settled down on the cushions. It was the Titanic and the coolness from the water. It's nice here, she told him. I wouldn't have brought you here otherwise, he said in a velvet voice. Let's order something, the girl asked him. And if you want, show me. He called for a waiter. They served various exotic fruits, which the girl had never tasted. She had never seen them. The order was placed. Now all that was left was to wait for it to arrive. Thank you for this paradise. Adriana looked at her companion. Thank you, beautiful. He kissed her hand. What words the girl had not heard today. She was having such a good time for the first time. When all the fruit was eaten, the illuminating liquid was drunk. The waiter brought the bill. I'll pay it. Made a gesture to the man good. At that moment, a thought flashed through Adriana's mind. What if he had told her to pay? and she had everything left in the room. After that, they walked along the edge of the sea some more, and the girl hurried home. She didn't see Joe again for the rest of the day, but she wanted to see him when they had to leave the next day. Adriana made up her mind. She took her money with her, put it in a small purse, put on a light dress, and went to where the yachts were parked. She realized she worked for one of them. "Hello, Joe." She saw him on one of the decks. "Oh, hi." Immediately, he went to meet her. "I'm flying out tomorrow, and I'd like to spend the evening with you in one exhale," she said. "Okay, only I have things to do for now." He pointed to where he had just been, and no way to put it off. She made a sad face. "If I put it off, they won't give me any money." He was being honest with her. That's how it seemed to the girl. "It's okay, if that's the problem I have." She opened her purse. "Then go ahead." And he spoke through his white teeth. Once again, he led her to an unusual place that was right there on the beach. Now it was some sort of bungalows with tables inside. "Where do you find such beautiful places?" asked Adriana. "I know how to please the queen." He gave a thumbs up. If he didn't order anything last time, he was on top of his game today. At one point, Adriana even thought she wouldn't have enough money to pay for it. "Why are you sad?" he asked. "She is so reluctant to leave here," she said honestly. "Hopefully, because of me." He smiled his beautiful smile again. "Maybe you had something to do with it too." She was embarrassed. Later it was over. Adriana had given away almost all the money she had with her. But today she didn't spare anything. Just as long as the handsome man would say nice words to her and be there for her. She returned to the hotel. Her husband was asleep. She didn't expect anything else from him. In the morning, they were put on a bus that took them to the airport. After landing, takeoff, landing, and now they were home again. "How'd you burn out?" Considering Betty's daughter. "Yeah, there's good sunshine." She pulled out the souvenirs she brought on the table. "What about Michael?" a woman asked. It was better not to ask. Adriana turned away to avoid looking her mother in the eye. A fight, she realized. "No, we just vacationed in different places," the girl said. Michael was at home lying in bed. He still couldn't get over what he had done there on vacation. "Did you remember anything?" Adriana laughed at him. "Yeah," he nodded. "Good for you." The girl thought that next time she would go there alone. Her husband had to pack for another shift again. Adriana saw him off and sat down at the computer. When they parted in the hall, he handed her a piece of paper on which his mail was written. 2 days after her arrival, Adriana wrote to him, but he did not reply. She tried again. Maybe she had written something wrong, and again he didn't answer her. Then the girl thought that since he worked there, he had a lot of people like her. Why write? Michael arrived once again. He was so tired it was scary to look at him. He'd never been like this before, she wondered. "Pour me a drink," Michael asked. Only now she realized that the fatigue was not from work, but from something else, which most likely the man was doing on the train after the shift, when they were going home. "Are you jamming all the way?" she asked her husband. And that we after such a long shift cannot even relax. For the first time in a while he raised his voice at her. "Oh, Michael, you'll be lost." She put some homemade wine on the table for him. "It's not up to you," he told her, and started unpacking the containers. Adriana did not want to watch all this. She decided to walk to her mom's for now. "Hi. What are you doing up so late?" Mom was sitting at the table. "I can't stay home." For the first time in her life, Adriana honestly admitted to her mother that this was how she looked at her husband, who was asleep on the couch. "Yeah, that's what my daughter," nodded her head. "No way." Betty covered her eyes with her hands. Adriana continued to work. She was doing it even more now, because she didn't want to be at home. Listening to her husband's ramblings, he and the men must be talking about their wives and girlfriends. So it turns out they're all walkers. The girl was quietly selling cakes, tea, and coffee. She really liked to please people who thanked her for it. "Come again," she said after the departing customers. When Michael was on another watch, The girl piked a message on the computer. She quickly sat down for it, opened the mail, and oh joy, she wrote Joe. How long had she waited for this letter? What's wrong? She wrote to him. Why did you take so long to reply? Adriana, I'm in a terrible situation. I need money urgently. I wonder if you could give me some. I'll pay you back, I swear. A man wrote back. Sure, how much do you need? She was willing to help because it was such a nice man. I got $1,000 back. I'll wire it to you right away. Just give me the account number. There was not a single thought in her head. After she got the coveted numbers, she immediately transferred everything to the account. Thank you. She saw the message on the screen. Butterflies fluttered inside. She was happy he hadn't forgotten her. When things got bad, he turned to his queen for help. Adriana flew on wings for the first couple of days. She checked every hour to see if he'd write her anything. But Adriana, she got no more letters. Now when her husband came home, she just didn't talk to him. And on one visit, she gave him an ultimatum. It was either me or these friends of yours. With all the consequences, she told him. What does that mean? He didn't get it because he was already on the horn. Go away, Adriana said quietly. Inside, she had nothing more for this man. Adriana, I love you. He fell at her feet. I don't think you love me. You love her more. She nodded at the bottle on the table. Don't drive her away, he begged. If this happens again tomorrow, you take your stuff and get out of here. She was determined. After the girl told her mother about all this, she just cried. Daughter, why should you take it out on him? He'll get better. You just have to kill him a little. She told her, I see how I see my Golubov, all the work in the house on you. And he spit. Adriana, stay alone. Sadly, said the woman. So you're afraid of it? Adriana smiled. Joe immediately came to mind. No, I'm just saying I didn't want to discuss my family, Betty. Then don't tell me if you don't know. The girl went home and went to bed. In the morning, as usual, dough, stuffing, boiling water, and on the road. For some reason, there were few customers that day. It was slushy on the roads. I guess that's why nobody left the house. But she still managed to sell half of them. She came home, and Michael was in the same condition. She didn't say anything, took his bag, threw his stuff in it, and pushed him out the door. And then she pushed her husband in and walked him out the same way. That's all. And she fucked her hands like flour. After that, she sat down at the computer. Hey, Joe, what happened to you? I haven't heard from you. No word for so many days, Adriana wrote. She sat and looked where nothing else was written. The girl waited, but Joe never responded. She had already gotten up to clean the house. Suddenly, a bell rang. It was a text message. Adriana's hands even shook. She threw all her hands, wiped them right on the hem, sat down, and began to read. Hello. The one she had been waiting for so long was writing to her. You helped me a lot last time. I got out of it. I'm so happy for you that everything worked out so well. Adriana, and I didn't need any money, just as long as he wrote. You know what I'm thinking. The light of my eyes, that you'd come to me. I can't live without you. I want things to be good between us. I started my business, got a little out of season, lost my business. I was wondering if you could help me out. One more time. He asked Adriana for money again. Of course, she had already prepared to transfer it. Then send the same amount. The man didn't bother. It's done. A message from her. You have no idea how much I miss your eyes. You're the most beautiful. What's happened to me over the years? He showered me with compliments. I'm so glad you wrote me, don't be silent. Let me know how you're doing. At the end, she put a smiley face kiss. Soon we'll be together, my queen. That was his last message for the day. Mom, can I help you with something? Her happy daughter came to her, but then she saw her husband sitting at the table. Don't swear, he's leaving tomorrow. Betty told her, okay, if you know everyone who is doing this, then be happy. She walked out of her mother's, and went home. But even that couldn't ruin the mood she was in. The next time Joe wrote was 2 weeks later. Now he needed money again, but to pay the taxes on the house so she could come there, or God forbid they would take it away. Once again, Adriana sent it to him. Her savings were running out very quickly. She realized that if he asked her a few more times, there would be nothing left at all. "I'll probably go to live in another country soon," Adriana said to her mom. Why? She didn't understand. "I will live and work there," calmly said the girl. "I don't understand you. To a city that's close by. You did not want to. And now you are flying to another country." The woman looked at her daughter with frightened eyes. "Do not worry, everything will be fine," said the girl. She came home. There was a message on the screen. Her heart rolled faster. Adriana realized that it was her beloved Joe writing to her, and it was really him. "Hi." He started off beautifully. As always, "Hello." She would write to her favorite, but that was just her thinking, so she was shy for now. "I want to tell you that I've sorted out all my affairs, and now I'm waiting for you to visit." I put a heart at the end of the alley. "Of course, darling, I've been ready for this for a long time." She was sitting at her desk, her palms sweating with excitement. "When can I expect you?" Oh, sweetheart." He didn't say anything about tickets or anything. The rest was just about deadlines. "I'll look up the tickets, and I'll leave as soon as I can." She really was glowing like the sun right now. "Love you, my beautiful goddess." He said goodbye to her. The first thing to do was to get a divorce. That's why Adriana went to town. Afterward, she went to the ticketing place. She looked for the next flight. She was fine with it. It looked like she'd be at her macho man's place in a week. "Mom, I'm going to Dubai," she announced. To a woman when she got back from the city. "There's a woman sitting in a chair. I can't tell you what's going on yet, but there's a handsome prince waiting for me there." The girl blushed. "You look, just don't get burned," warned her Betty. "Everything will be fine. I know it for sure." Adriana was confident in herself and her man. She had all her papers and things packed. Now it was only a matter of time. "Olenka, hello." She came to the neighbor girl again. "Hello." She was surprised. "Listen, it's a shame to leave your business. Maybe you'll take care of it for a while." Adriana asked. "What can I do?" The one's eyes immediately sewed, and she knew how much Adriana was making there. "You owe me 20% while I'm gone, and then we'll figure it out." That was the deal. "All right, I'll give the money to your mom." That was the deal. Now I could leave with a calm heart. Back home, Adriana checked everything one more time. She took all the necessary clothes, documents, money, some jewelry. All that was left was to wait for the day when her plane would be there to take her to her lover. "Mommy, I'm leaving tomorrow. So you want me to watch the house?" Adriana came to her. "Okay. You think I wouldn't have done it without your reminders?" Told her Betty back. "No, I just don't feel like saying goodbye. After all, it's not even a few kilometers away." They hugged. "Where are you going?" Dad went into the kitchen. "She's just going on vacation abroad," Betty told her husband. "Well, let it be so." Adriana agreed with her. She took her bags home and went to the station. The bus took a long time to jolt on the scraps. Adriana had never felt like this before. Now it felt like a washboard. Finally, they arrived in the city, from which it would still take 3 hours to get to the airport by train. But Adriana was not intimidated by any difficulties. She knew that there in a distant country she was loved and welcomed. "Hello." Everyone was very polite. Adriana was being screened and checked in. "Go ahead." She was invited onto the plane. She took her seat, closed her eyes to get some sleep. Her ears popped. So the plane was gaining altitude. After that, calmness. That's how the girl fell asleep. She was awakened only when they started serving food. It was not very comfortable, but she did not refuse. "Dear passengers, our plane." She heard the voice of the stewardess. It meant that she had finally arrived, and in a few minutes she would see her handsome boyfriend. People crowded in as they descended, traveled, and received their luggage. Adriana was standing with her suitcase in her hand when she saw him. He was walking so tall, clean, handsome. "Queen, you've come to see me," he hugged her. "Hi." She could smell the scent she couldn't forget until now. "Let's go. I'll drive you like a goddess." He gave her his hand. They reached the car, got in, and drove off. "How are you doing?" Adriana asked on the way. "I'm fine. I might even say great." He was showing her okay. "I'm so glad we're back together." She wanted to say something warm to the man. "I couldn't live without you." It was like being in the dark the whole time. He put his hand on her shoulder. They drove for a long time. It seemed like the end of the city, but Adriana said nothing. Finally, they pulled up to a house. It was small, beautiful. "Your hand, Queen." He opened the door for Adriana. "You are such a gallant suitor," she laughed. "Come in." He led her into the house. After that, they went into some room. Joe put Adriana's suitcase by the window. He offered her something to eat, a drink of water. She didn't refuse. Then the couple sat down at the table. "How am I going to live here? I don't know the language at all." The girl asked him. "It's okay. You'll get used to it." He smiled. There was some porridge and chips on the table. Adriana thought it was traditionally a bit skewed. Afterwards, she asked Ole where she could set up. "In this room for now. But tonight I'll show you another one," promised the girl. "Okay, I'm ready for anything." She smiled all the time because she was so happy to be with this man. "I'm so happy about it. But there's one catch. There's no food in the house at all. I've put all my money into business. Couldn't you buy something?" He looked at her with those honest eyes. "Joe, anything you say." She was ready to go to pieces just to make her man feel good. They left the house again, drove down the street, and stopped in front of a big store. Joev took out a large basket. It seemed to Adriana then that he began to put everything in it. The girl was surprised to herself, but said nothing aloud. At the checkout, she had to shell out a good amount of money, but she had no regrets, for now she would be with him and would definitely help him in everything. And now home, the goddess spoke. They quickly drove back. Then the man asked Adriana to make him something to eat. The dinner was lovely. Afterwards, they talked about how they met. Then Adriana admired the man, and then he kissed her and caressed her into the bedroom. "My love?" He asked her a question. "Yes," she exhaled. Even just his touch and scent alone made Adriana go crazy. She might as well not have been asked where they would go after this. Joe lifted her into his arms. They went into a room where there was a large bed. He laid her there himself, lay down beside her, and slowly began to undress her. "Are you so tender?" he whispered to her. "And you are so passionate," she answered him. Adriana had no one but her husband, so she did not know what to expect from this man. "Goddess," he kissed her from heels to top of her head. "Or God," she echoed him. After the intimacy occurred, the man lay down next to her. At that moment, the light in the room turned on. A woman ran in who often said something, but not a single word was incomprehensible. "Who is it?" Adriana was frightened. Key's translator advised her. He himself lay very calmly. Adriana took the phone with trembling hands. She did not understand what was going on and why Joe was so calm. Finally, she found the function the man was talking about, selected the language and pressed turn on. "I am this man's wife, and if I call the police now, you're going to jail," screamed the woman. "What's going on again?" she asked Joe. "Give her your passport." Also calmly said Joe. Adriana. "Why?" She didn't understand. "Otherwise she will now call the authorities, and you will go to jail for a long time. In our country, you can't have sex with a married man." It was a wall of stone. Not a muscle in his face wavered. "I love you," Adriana cried. "I love you," Adriana cried. "And I love you. But it won't help you." He looked at the woman he called his wife, and then pointed to Adriana's purse on the suitcases. Aha, just said. She rushed to the things. DK revealed her passport, money, and jewelry. Everything was in her hands. I don't get it, screamed the guest. That's when Joe forcefully slapped her across the face. After that, it was all a blur. She was being dragged somewhere. She woke up from a pungent odor when she opened her eyes and sat on the floor. Turns out she was in some kind of basement. Joe, she screamed, but no one heard her. Help, cried Adriana. So she sat in that room for about 3 days. At one point, she just lost track of time. And then he came to her. Her God, she said. A few days ago, he shouted to her. Joe, what's going on? Why are you doing this to me? I've done so much for you. She started crying and crawled to him. Get away. He almost kicked her voice with his foot. The man's was no longer so gentle and velvet. He was angry. What do you want? She asked. Is there still money in the account? He asked. What money? In what account? Adriana did not understand. All this time, she had not been fed or fed. Adriana, said he with that accent with which they call all Russian girls that she raised her eyes to him. Do you have money? It was obvious that he didn't like to repeat himself. I do. She couldn't lie because she thought it would help her. On transferring everything to me, he handed her the laptop. The girl did as she was told. She hoped he would let her go after that, but he just snatched the computer out of her hands. Listen to me carefully. He sat over her ear. Yeah, she thought there'd be instructions. I'm going to take you upstairs now. Chain bite to a table that's built into the floor. You'll cook for my wife and me. Do whatever we tell you. You'll sleep here. I'll come over once in a while. At that moment, he ran his hand over her cheek. What did that mean? She didn't understand. It was like a movie. It means that if you don't give me more money in a few days, I'll send you to a brothel, and they'll spare no expense for you. He laughed. Asshole. She threw him in the back. But Joe was walking. He kept laughing. Adriana sat in the dark basement. She didn't know what to do now. She was in a foreign country with no papers, no phone. What should she do? Who would rescue her? There were so many questions in her head and not a single answer to them. Adriana cried. How she could only believe this scammer. It was only now that she compared everything and realized that she had just fallen for this same slave. You're here yelling at her hours later. No, gone, she snarled. We're hungry. He put a chain around her leg and led her like a dog. Why are you doing this to me? Saying those words to me. And now I was still trying to make him feel sorry for me. Girl, shut up. He yanked the chain. So Adriana almost fell. She stood at the stove, cooking by herself, looking around the axle, but there was nothing of the sort around. The idea of a knife flashed through her mind. What if she threw it at him with it? What if it didn't hit, but she was really good at throwing them at school? What are you up to? Joe said to her as if he'd read her mind. Nothing. She was chopping vegetables. When it was done, the man took her down to the basement again and brought her a bucket of water. Pray, he told her. And in the night he came. By now, there was nothing pleasant Adriana felt anymore, only disgust for that hair freak. He did all his business and got up. Am I going to stay here again? She looked up at him. No, I'll put you in your crib, he said snidely. The girl cried again. During that night, she had examined the whole wall, windows that had bars on them. Would you rather go to jail than sit here? She shouted loudly, but she knew no one could hear her. Adriana lay on the mattress. She was cold. She was going crazy with what was going on in her head. Get up. He came after her again. What do you want her to do tomorrow? Nothing. She shut up. He slapped her face with the palm of his hand. Day after day went by like that. Adriana didn't know what day or date it was. She was trying to find a loophole to get out of this unfortunate house. I need money. Again he came to her. I don't have any more. She was telling the truth. So I called your beloved mother. He held her phone in his hand. She jumped up to take it away from him. And what do you think? It wouldn't work. He put his hand up. Adriana was crying again. At some point, the girl felt a draft. It had never happened here before. She groped around for where the air was coming from. It was the ventilation. She tried to pull the grate. It gave way. Fear shook her inside and out. "My queen, I'm coming for you." She heard a voice on the steps. Adriana quickly put the bars back in place and lay down on the mattress as if she had slept there. "So, tired, sleep." He sat down next to her. After she didn't answer him, he got up and poured cold water on her from a bucket. "Are you crazy? It's not hot enough in here," she shouted at him. And at the same moment she received a slap. "You'd better keep quiet, or they'll do something else to you." He squeezed her cheeks hard. "Yeah, fuck you." She didn't care where she went, but she had to get out of this basement. At night, when Joe left, she removed the ventilation grate again, and it was impossible to pull herself up by her arms. She had eaten very little in the meantime, so the girl used all the same bucket. When she tapped it on, she lurked like a mouse, but she heard nothing. Adriana climbed into the pipe and crawled forward, but just as she expected. At the end was a propeller that was spinning. It must not have worked before, so she couldn't feel it blowing somewhere. Shit. Anna couldn't help herself. After crawling back to the basement, putting the grate back in place, she realized she didn't have the energy for a second try today. "My joy." A man walked toward her this morning. "Not a good morning to you either." She looked at him with a glare. "If you're rude, I'll punish you." He smiled. "Yeah, much more than that." She walked over to the table where she was always cooking. While she was doing all this, she saw that there were wooden sticks on the table and decided to take them with her. "What have you got there?" "Put it back," said the tyrant to her. "Asshole." Once again, she said. At that moment, Adriana saw a calendar by the number that was marked today. She realized that she had been here for over a month. Something said, "Sweetie," interjected at her. "What did you hear?" She continued to cut and stir. After that, she was sent to the basement again. The girl used to eat what was left on the table while the dish was cooking. Now she'd take some with her if Joe didn't see it. Today she was carrying a few slices of bread. Joe hadn't been heard from all day. Adriana took up the bucket again. Suddenly, its muzzle clattered. The girl was startled. Then her eyes lit up. The Dushka. She would be the one to help her. Adriana remembered her father teaching her how to pull out the noose when the bucket in the well was breaking from that very part. "Thank you, Daddy," she said in a whisper and carefully removed the thin but sturdy iron. And again, she set the bucket up, sliding it inside the pipe. As at that moment she heard footsteps. Adriana did not remember herself from fear. She got out of there so quickly. And the grate and placed herself on the mattress. "She was waiting for me." He came to her. "No." She was shaking like a leaf. "Well, we'll just have to put up with a named guest." He tore off her shirt, which was the only piece of clothing she had. After he left, and some time passed, Adriana tried again, and must crawl to the screw, abruptly shoved the sole from the bucket there. And it stopped. She herself doesn't know how she managed to squeeze through that little hole that let her out. But Adriana had done it. The girl realized that she couldn't show her face on the street like that. She saw something hanging outside the house. It was a tablecloth or a blanket, but it didn't matter. Adriana wrapped it around herself, and in it she walked down Night Street. It was scary, but she had to hide somewhere, and she went up to the roof of one of the houses. There was grass growing there. You couldn't see it. It was soft at the same time. Can you imagine? Someone stole a plate from a neighbor at night. I heard Russian speech. But at the same moment, a man said something not in Russian. Adriana understood. The woman was probably on the phone. What to do? What to do? She wanted to cry, but she couldn't relax. It was good that no one had noticed her here before nightfall. The girl realized that the grass on the roof was growing for a reason, some flowers tending the edges. She walked down to the sidewalk, determined to find some store to ask for something to eat. "Hey," she heard from the side of the house. Adriana got scared. I started to back away. A man approached her. He was dressed almost identically to her. "Hello, help me." She pleaded without shaking her head that she didn't understand anything. She tried to get away from him. She realized that this man was in rags for a reason. Maybe he's capturing his own kind and then turning them over to his masters. "Where are you taking me?" She was afraid to scream. He put his finger to his lips. They reached an archway. There the man jumped, and it was already as if on another street. The girl saw some boxes, some boards, some children sitting there, where we seemed to her that she was in a nightmare, and now she's going to wake up. And she's at her mom's house. A woman came out to meet us. She was the same indeterminate age as the one who brought her here. They handed her some bread. "Thank you." She nodded. Then a man started a fire and some iron utensils right outside. Adriana saw that he was splashing from some kind of jar. She moved closer, getting warmer. Adriana thought of taking the jar with her, but who would just give it to her? She looked around, and it looked like the lowest stratum of the population lived here. "How do you live here?" she cried. The woman gave her some kind of pizza. It smelled so bad that Adriana almost threw up. She stood up, gestured for her to go. But the man grabbed her arm again. He said something and pointed to the sky. The son guessed the girl, those nodded their heads. But how could she walk the streets unhindered when everyone would see her? She agreed with them anyway that they were in the basement. When Adriana lay down on one of the boards they offered her, these people up above was a canopy. She thought, where is she going? Who will believe her? Tears flowed with renewed vigor from her eyes. Adriana was so angry that nothing could stop her. She thought she would stay here until tomorrow and then get revenge on Joe. "Can I have this?" she asked the woman in the morning, pointing to the bottle. The woman only spread her hands. "I don't know what it was. Either I don't understand or I don't know. I'll take it." Adriana decided to do something different, and she took what she needed and put it in her pocket. The woman started to say something. She took out what she had just put in her pocket, then went around the corner and brought back the same one, but a new one. And the matches showed Adriana the gesture of a lighter. They looked at each other like two crazy people. Nobody understood anything. After Adriana began to remember the game of crocodile, where all actions are described without the help of sounds, and she started to show a fire. But in order to have one, you have to light it. Then the woman understood and brought her a lighter. "Here's thanks, kind people," she said. The girl waited until it was dark. She walked back to where they came from, the poor people. But no matter how much she told her to, she could not find the road from which they had come. Had to go back and gesticulate again. The old man seemed to understand her. He took her hand again and led her to that very ark. How interesting. She herself had passed by here many times, but had not noticed it, and once again the girl thanked her already on the road. First, she went to the house that had grass on the roof. By it she could orient herself where that ill-fated cellar, in which she spent many days. This was definitely it. She saw that the place where the vent was. It was definitely him. She saw the place where the vent was plugged with plywood. Adriana whispered a couple times with her foot. The plywood flew off. Then she spilled the hot liquid wherever she could and threw the rest into the vent and set it on fire. "Help me. They're keeping me in the basement." She screamed and ran in the direction where she could hear Russian speech. The girl climbed onto the roof, where she spent the whole night in the grass, and then looked down. "Help." She saw a woman in the window. "Who are you?" "Oh my God." She clutched her heart. "My name is Adriana. I'm from Russia. I was called to visit by your neighbor Joe, and he himself forcibly kept me in the basement." She spoke quickly. At that moment there was a loud and terrible explosion. The woman in the house crouched down, and Adriana pressed her head to the ground. She was sure it was the gas in Joe's house that had exploded. And then a car with flashers arrived. The woman Adriana had asked for help from showed her where she was. They barely got her off the roof because she was struggling. Local homeless people were found and accused of arson, but they pointed out to Adriana that she was the one who took the liquid. The girl was brought to the station, and an interpreter was assigned to her. "I told you I did it. I just resisted." She couldn't explain for an hour why she did it. The man in uniform said something fast and inarticulate to the interpreter, confusingly translating. "Well, what am I going to get the death penalty now?" She looked at the man who was now serving as an interpreter between her and the police. "No, perhaps a fine and deportation. Banned from crossing the border forever." He told her, "Yes, I'm both hands in favor." Adriana nodded her head several times. She was taken to a cell, and they discussed something for a long time. The footage was all over the news. What a miracle that Michael was watching the news. He stopped drinking. He'd gotten smart and was renting again in the city. "That's Adriana, my Adriana." He heard her say she was kept in the basement, crying. The man didn't sit still. He called one number, called another, and wondered what to do in such cases. But it all worked out. Adriana was indeed deported, and she was able to return to Russia without documents. A trial was held there. She was recognized as a victim, so no charges were assigned. Just one fine for defacing city property. She drove to the village thin and embittered against the world. Adriana heard a man's voice from behind her, shuddered, turned around. Michael stood in front of her. "What are you doing here?" She asked him in a husky voice. "I saw you on the news, tried to do something, but I didn't know how. Then I waited to hear from you, but I didn't." You could see he wanted to feel sorry for her, to hold her close. But the ex-husband was afraid. "Forgive me at this point," spoke Adriana. "For what?" He came up, put his arms around her, and pressed her against him. "How stupid was I?" She was sobbing. Nothing happens to everyone in life. As best he could, he soothed the girl. "Only it could happen to me, because I am a village fool who has never been anywhere and has never seen anything." She continued screaming loudly and sobbing at the same time. "No need to beat yourself up like that," he told her quietly. They were already approaching the house. All she stood in front of him, and in a second she calmed down, wiped her tears. What didn't he understand? Mom can't know anything. Even if she ever caught wind of this news, it was a long time ago, and not true. Adriana blinked once more, smiled, and she and Michael walked into the house. "Hi, here I am." She stood in the middle of the kitchen, but no one came out to see her. Couldn't they be somewhere else? Michael asked quietly. "I don't know. It's too late to work." Adriana walked quietly through the rooms, but there was no one there. They went outside. Pigs, chickens, goats, cows, all in place. No, just the owners. Then Adriana suggested that they might have gone to her house to do something there. That's where they went. Michael saw from afar that the light was on in the windows and that they were not sitting at home. The girl didn't understand. Now we'll ask them. They entered the house. "Hello." Adriana couldn't understand anything. Mother and father were sitting in their shirts and drinking tea after the bath. "Daughter, where are you from?" They stood up to meet her. "I have a question for you too. What are you doing here? Isn't your house enough? Or do you like my little bathhouse better than your huge one?" The girl smiled. "My father and I thought about it and decided that you would go to that house. But as I see, now you are not alone, and we will stay here." The woman concluded, "Well, that's good for you. And the cattle." She looked at her mother and father. "If you want it, slaughter it and sell it. You don't want to take care of it and raise it. There'll always be meat later." Her mother gave her the freedom of choice. "I see." She sat down on the bench, saw the milk in the jar, took a sip. "I want to tell you that our country, our people and our men are the best in the world. There's nowhere else like it." She tilted the jar again and drank it all down. "It's as if you hadn't drunk milk all your life." Mom was surprised at the change in her daughter's behavior. I hadn't. She was sober, but happy drunk. Here she was with her mom. Dad and even Michael, whom she herself had kicked out of the door. The girl cried, "Adriana, what's wrong?" The woman asked her. "Nothing." She shook her head. After everything, Michael picked her up, and together they walked home to where her mother and father had lived not long ago. "Can I stay with you?" he asked quietly. Of course, she hugged him. They lay in the night and were silent. "Adriana, will you marry me again?" he asked her. "And will you forgive me for all the things I have done?" She wondered too. "What did you do?" He turned to her, didn't pretend he didn't understand. She turned and hugged her former future husband too. "I never pretended at all. It was bad. I started drinking. And when everything is good, there's no need to drink," he said. "So you were bad with me if you started doing it at that time." She was surprised. "Not at work. But I couldn't leave until we got to the point where we were contracted. Just like you in that basement, I was on my watch." He kissed her on the nose. "Michael, you're so good. Forgive me, you fool." She turned away from him, and he put his arm around her. Just put his arm around Adriana, and they fell asleep. And in the morning, they told their parents they were getting married. They were happy for them. "You see, I told you not to be so hard on yourself." The mother hugged her daughter. "Now I will always obey you." Adriana cried. The picture of her sitting in the basement came back to her eyes. There was no one to blame but herself. She had done it all with her own hands, even though it was her fault. But if it hadn't been for Adriana and her love, he might have forgotten about her. As last time, the young people went to the city to get married in the registry office there, and afterward came to the village. Now there were no more off-site registrations. Michael and Adriana decided to get married in a church. Everything was ready for it. The village was fully assembled. "Guys, I wish you only happiness, as in my childhood to my daughter." And now said Betty to the newlyweds, "I had to lose you and get a divorce to find my happiness," took her in his arms again and began to twirl Michael around. "Everything's going to be okay." Adriana believed that. She talked to Sofia about how things were going while she was away. It turned out to be pretty good. Michael still had all of his savings left that he hadn't had time to spend anywhere. Husband and wife started building a small store, a cafe right there on the highway. Drivers who passed by often all knew that this place had the most delicious pies and also meat and eggs. Adriana was happy with her man and what she'd missed about him before. "I love you." She went up to him every time and kissed him. "What's gotten into you?" He laughed. He just wanted to say it, and she laughed. "I'm so happy when you smile." He was being honest with her. Subscribe and click the bell. Adriana sat at home waiting for her mother and father to come home from work. They worked at the poultry farm as laborers. Adriana had already heated her parents' dinner and looked out of her relative's window. Soon the 17-year-old girl saw her mother, followed by her father. Adriana smiled and ran to open the front door. As soon as her parents walked in, Adriana said she wanted to talk to them over dinner. The head of the family looked at her daughter with a stern look and asked, "I hope the conversation is not about your pregnancy." "Daddy, again you have failed to make a joke." A little irritated, said the daughter, who already knew her father's gaze and always distinguished when the gaze is angry. And when deliberately angry in such a situation, the man was not angry. The head of the family on the daughter's answer laughed and said, "You know me and my mother is peeled. Okay, let's set the table and talk over dinner." Soon the family was sitting in the kitchen and talking peacefully. When dinner was about to end, the girl's father asked his daughter what exactly she wanted to say. Adriana hesitated a bit and said that she had changed her mind about going to medical school and wanted to become an interior designer. When the father heard this, he was amazed, because his daughter had been dreaming about medicine since she was 16 years old. And then, when it is already necessary to go to enroll, she changes her mind. And he asked why you choose this particular direction in our village in this specialty. You obviously do not get a job. I know that, but maybe I'll be lucky enough to make my personal life in the city. And to be honest, I don't really want to go back to the village where there's no future. You're the one who started dreaming about a prince on a white horse, but you are not yet 18 to think about it," said the girl's mother. "Mom, Dad, but I'll be 18 on September 1st, and I'm not saying that I'm going to the city to arrange my personal life right now. Right now, I want to major in design." Parents. The girls looked at each other, and the head of the family did not object to his daughter's choice. He told his wife that Adriana has the right to decide what she wants to be in the future. Adriana's mother looked at her child, then hugged her and asked her to keep her head in the city. The girl gratefully hugged each parent in turn. Soon, Adriana left for the city where she enrolled in college to study design. The girl was given a dormitory as a non-resident. She immediately made friends with her roommate, and soon Adriana began her studies. In college, Adriana especially became friends with fellow student Betty, who lived in this city with her parents. Adriana liked this girl with her carefree character. Time moved imperceptibly, and now the winter vacation was approaching. A week before Adriana's departure to the village, Betty suggested to her to go and sit in a cafe. Adriana supported her friend's idea, as she didn't often visit such places due to lack of money. Her parents sent her some money, but they quickly ran out. Soon the students were sitting in a cafe and discussing how they would celebrate the new year. Betty said that she would go to a nightclub where she would have a good time. Adriana said sadly that she did not have such an opportunity because they had not yet built such entertainment places in the village. Betty looked at her in amazement and then asked, "How do you have fun there? Young people usually go to the club on weekends for discos." "Well, it sucks. I don't envy the villagers," Betty said with a laugh. The girls continued to talk to each other as two young men approached them and offered them company. Betty looked at the boys. Then she looked at Adriana as if to ask if she would be willing to be introduced. Adriana nodded and let her friend know she was okay with it. And in just a few minutes, the guys had already joined the girls. One of the young men was called Konstantin, and the other Stephen. Adriana immediately took notice of Stephen, and the whole evening was sneaking glances at him. Adriana also noticed that her friend liked this guy. Some more time passed, and Adriana told the company that it was time for her to go to the dormitory. The young men sighed disappointedly, and Konstantin said that he and his friend had hoped to go for a longer walk. Adriana responded by suggesting that they should meet tomorrow and just walk outside. Stephen, having heard the suggestion, took up the idea, and then he drove Adriana to the dormitory and then Betty home in his car. Adriana was already lying down to rest, thinking about her new acquaintance, when she received a call on her cell phone from a friend. Betty excitedly described how she had a long conversation with Stephen when saying goodbye. Adriana unknowingly felt jealous of the boyfriend, and suddenly she said, "Classmates, why are you telling me this now? I want to bring it to your attention that I like Stephen, and I saw you looking at him in the cafe. So I'm going to ask you to turn your attention to his friend. Don't tell me what to do. And you're right to point out that I was looking at him because I liked him too. Now I will bring it to your attention that Stephen is an adult, and it's up to him to decide who he wants to spend his time with," Adriana said sharply, and immediately disconnected the connection. The next day, the girls met at the college. They felt that a cat had run between them and did not communicate especially strongly. And in the evening of the same day, when the girls met with their boyfriends, the young men noticed that the girls tried not to communicate with each other. Stephen at first tried to defuse the situation, and then asked what fly had bitten you both. "Yesterday was so much fun, and today it's like a day of mourning. Why don't we break into pairs? I want to go out with Adriana." And after the last sentence, he turned to Adriana and asked, "Do you mind?" "Of course not." With a smile, the girl answered, and looked triumphantly at her friend, who smirked wryly and said quietly, "But it's on. Go for a walk." Adriana got into the car to Stephen, and they went for a drive around the evening city. In the car, the young man asked the girl to tell about herself. She complied with his request, And then the man asked what had happened between the girls. Adriana, shit, she said to herself as she did not know what to answer. In the meantime, Stephen looked questioningly at Daddy, said a little fight they had. Asking what for? Since I won't tell you anyway. Okay, I won't ask. And anyway, you found out all about me. Why I don't know your background yet. The young man laughed and said that he kept more about himself on purpose, so that there was a reason to meet again. The young woman liked his answer, but insisted that he tell her about himself. From the narrative, Stephen Adriana learned that he is 27 years old, works in a bank. He lives with his mother, but is going to buy a 2-room apartment within a month. About his father, the guy said that his father died last year. And also the young man said that he was married. The marriage lasted only a year. The girl, having heard that Stephen was divorced, asked why he separated from his wife. The interlocutor, after a little thought, replied, "There is a reason that is most often used by people who want to divorce. It is called so. They did not match their characters. I hope that your curiosity satisfied." After a while, the girl said she had to go to the hostel. The man drove Adriana home, and when she was about to get out of the car, he pulled her to him and wanted to kiss her. Adriana pushed the new acquaintance away from her and asked indignantly what he was doing. Stephen looked at the girl perplexed and simply replied that he wanted to kiss the now Adriana. She looked at the young man in amazement and mumbled, "Is it customary for you to kiss a girl on the lips on the second day of acquaintance? What's wrong with that? But we hardly know each other to kiss already," she said quietly. "If you don't want to, I won't. Okay, let's say goodbye. I gotta go too. We'll see each other again, of course, but only after a while, because I have to go on a business trip. I'm going to my parents' house in a few days too. You will call me for sure." Soon, Adriana went to her parents' house in the countryside. She stayed there for the winter vacation. During this time, the guy called her on New Year's Eve, and one more time. The girl was worried that her relationship with Stephen might not work out. She had already realized that she had fallen in love with this man with all her heart. Soon Adriana arrived for her studies. At college, she met up with a friend she hadn't spoken to since Stephen had suggested a walk through the pears. Adriana thought that their conflict with her friend had already passed during the winter break. So without a second thought, she approached Betty and asked how the girl had celebrated New Year's Eve. Betty arrogantly glanced at her classmate and said, "Why are you wondering? My time about driving. Although I can tell you that I've had a good time these days. I went out with Stephen a couple times. He should be here tomorrow. By the way, what do you mean you met him?" Adriana asked in bewilderment. "You've gone to the country. So he suggested that we spend some leisure time together, and I didn't refuse." Adriana walked away from Betty in silence. She felt a wave of hatred rising in her soul towards her friend, but not towards the young man. Adriana blamed Betty for everything. She believed that it was her classmate who initiated these meetings. After studying, Adriana hurried to the dormitory. She couldn't wait to call her lover, and as soon as she found herself in the room, she immediately dialed Stephen. And when she heard his voice, she asked when he was coming. The guy was surprised at the girl's call and answered that in 2 days, and Adriana asked the question that worried her the most. "Tell me, why did you go out with me? You like Betty, don't you? You're strange, but I liked you. That's why we went out. Let me come over and we'll talk about it." Soon Stephen arrived in town and he met the girl. He looked at Adriana, who had her head down, looking at her hand. The man asked the girl why she had called earlier with this topic of conversation. Adriana kept silent as she did not want to admit to the guy that she was in love with him. And when Stephen pulled the girl to himself and kissed her passionately on the lips, she did not pull away, because at that moment she realized that if she pushed the men away now, Stephen would just leave and never come back. The guy kissed Adriana for a long time, and then the couple went for a drive around the city. After this meeting, a month passed. During this time, Stephen had already bought an apartment and occasionally met Adriana. The girl was angry that the guy came to her so rarely, and he told her in response that he had an emergency at work and had to stay at the bank a lot. Adriana practically did not communicate with her friend. Betty was calm about it and only occasionally made tricky jokes. That Adriana only needed Stephen for a while. Adriana tried not to react to her former friend's words. But one day, when she again heard a rejoinder in her address from Betty, she could not stand it and replied, "You are all angry that the word did not choose you, but that's not my fault. He made his own choice. Why don't you stop bugging me with your sarcastic remarks? You're silly. Pretty soon you'll be crying that you crossed me. Are you saying you'll still claim my boyfriend knowing I'm dating him? You got that right. And if I have to, I'm not going to play hard to get and jump into bed with him," Betty said with a smirk, and immediately went on her way. Adriana stood in a stupor. From this conversation, the girl suddenly realized that Stephen was talking to Betty, since how could the former friend know that she was denying Stephen intimacy? And at the same moment, Adriana decided that she would call her boyfriend right away and offer him to spend the night together. The girl, not thinking long, dialed the guy and said that she wanted to spend the weekend with a sleepover at his place. The man was stunned by this news and instantly agreed. Soon Adriana was making love to Stephen for the first time, and for the morning. When she woke up, she did not regret her decision. She wanted now every morning to wake up in the arms of her favorite man and hear from him pleasant compliments. After that night, the man came to the girl's dormitory more often and took her to his place for sleepovers. Adriana already thought that soon they would become husband and wife, and so she told her lover, "We have been dating for almost 3 months. Maybe we should think about getting married. I don't really need a stamp in my passport. We're good together, and that's what matters. You know, I have a question for you too. Tell me, what are you ready to do for love for me?" The young woman thought for a moment, and then in all seriousness answered that she was ready to sacrifice everything, but only to be near him. In response to this confession, the guy smiled and said that nothing had to be sacrificed, and immediately hugging the girl said, "I just want you to make a tattoo on your shoulder, descending roses. It really turns me on in bed, but it's up to you to decide if you want to do it or not. And if you agree to it, I'll draw the sketch of the flower myself. I'll do it. In the meantime, you draw the flower." The next day, the girl found out how much the procedure cost, and after that she called her mother to ask her for money. Adriana did not hide from her mother what she was asking for, and honestly said that she wanted to get a tattoo. Her mother responded by saying that it was stupid to disfigure her body with Adriana's pictures. When she heard the refusal, she continued to me, "It is very important to do it the way a loved one asked for it. You got a boyfriend, and you never even mentioned him once on the phone. How did you start living in the city? Did you become secretive? I'm sorry, but I wasn't ready to tell you about my relationship with this man. Now I'm sure of our feelings for each other. I'll tell you all about Stephen. But now you tell me, will you give me the money or not?" The mother said yes to her daughter. And on the same day, Adriana received a transfer from her parents. After a while, the girl visited a salon and made a tattoo on her right shoulder. She proudly showed the picture on her body to her lover. Stephen enthusiastically appreciated the tattoo and told the girl the cherished words that Adriana was dear to him. A month flew by when Adriana, having got up in the morning, felt indisposed. The girl felt nauseous and had a general feeling of weakness. Adriana barely sat through her classes that day, hurrying to the dormitory to lie down. She hoped that she would feel better the next day. However, it didn't happen. Adriana felt an uneasy feeling in her soul, and then it hit her. What if she was pregnant? After her college class, Adriana stopped by the drugstore and bought a test. When she got to her dorm, she went straight to the restroom where she did the procedure as instructed. And then the girl watched with excitement as 2 blue stripes appeared on the litmus paper. Adriana was unspeakably happy about it. After all, now she was carrying a baby from her favorite person under her heart. and this meant that soon Adriana will become the legal spouse of the chosen one. The young woman immediately called her lover and said that she wanted to see him immediately. The man promised the girl that as soon as he was free, he would come. Adriana waited with excitement for the chosen one to tell the glad tidings, and as soon as she saw Stephen, immediately hugged him and in his ear whispered the news about the baby. The man pulled away from the embrace and looked at the girl unhappily. Then he asked what Adriana was going to do about it. The young woman looked at the boy perplexed and said firmly that she was going to give birth. Stephen was a little down after the words of the girl, which did not escape Adriana's attention, and she asked him a question. "Are you not happy about it?" "I don't know how to answer that. It's just that the news was unexpected, and I wasn't ready to hear it. Since you decided to have a baby, we probably need to legalize the relationship so that the baby is born in a complete family, where there is a mom and dad. These are exactly the words I've been waiting to hear from you when you need to introduce me to your mom. And then I'm gonna call my parents and invite them over. And they're gonna rent an apartment here for a couple days. You and I need to get married as soon as possible, before I get a belly." Soon Stephen introduced Adriana to his mother Kathy. Adriana tried to be friendly with her future relative, but she intuitively sensed that the woman didn't like her. Adriana thought to herself that Adriana's mother was probably just not ready for her son to remarry and was therefore a little belligerent toward her. Meanwhile, Kathy began to ask the young couple when they were going to get married. Stephen replied that initially they would wait for Adriana's parents and then they would apply at once. The landlady nodded in response and immediately said, "Son, I won't discourage you from taking this step, but I think you're rushing the wedding. You don't know each other well enough to be a family. But if you've made this decision, I insist that there be no wedding. I just want you to get married without the formal part. Your father and I already spent a lot of money on your first wedding. I wasn't planning on having a big party. I was just going to get married and sit with my relatives in a cafe. And we're in a hurry to apply to the registry office for one reason only. Adriana is expecting a baby. You have a rare young person, as I see," Stephen's mother said coldly and looked at her future daughter-in-law with a piercing look. As soon as Adriana and her chosen one went outside from Kathy, the young woman told the man with annoyance that she would like to have a wedding, not a party. The young woman added that she was getting married for the first time and would like to be in a white dress on that day. Stephen replied that it was only a waste of finances to play a wedding now. The young woman tried to object to the young man, but he interrupted her and said, "You know very well that I have recently purchased real estate. I had savings, but not enough to buy an apartment, so I had to take out a loan from the bank. Now you think about it. How much money are we going to use for the party? Or maybe your parents will give us money to throw a wedding. No, they can't help us because they don't make much money. Then we'll never speak of it again." Soon Adriana called her parents and invited them to come to meet her fiancé. Only the girl's mother came. The woman blessed her daughter and promised that she and her father would already come to the marriage ceremony. Adriana was happy that now her mother is familiar with her favorite person. After a while, the young people filed an application in the registry office. Then the newlyweds celebrated the marriage ceremony in one cozy cafe, where only the closest relatives were present. After Adriana became the legal spouse of Stephen, then she moved to live in her husband's apartment. Time slowly went on. The first half of the pregnancy, the young woman felt good, but when the second mister began, then the doctor said that she needed to lie in the hospital for preservation. And as a result, Adriana was often in the hospital almost until the birth. The young woman gave birth prematurely, a baby girl, which she and her husband named Christina. While in the hospital, Adriana learned that her daughter had kidney disease. The young woman was very worried about this and asked Our Lady only for the health of her little girl. In connection with the girl's illness, Adriana stayed in the hospital for a long time, and after discharge, the attending doctor immediately said that now it was necessary to carefully monitor her daughter's condition and to act precisely according to the instructions of the medical staff. The young woman, as soon as she found herself at home, realized that she was not ready to cope with maternal duties alone. Adriana approached her husband and asked him to talk to her mom about staying with them for a while. Stephen, after listening to the request, responded by telling Adriana to call on her own. She was offended by her husband's words and told him, "You must be forgetting that Christina is your daughter. You see that the baby cries a lot. And I, because I became a mom for the first time, do not know how to act in this or that situation. You yourself wanted this baby, so you should be ready for all the surprises. There are internet forums and literature. Here, sit and learn how to babysit a baby. And after all, you have your own mother to turn to. But my mom works, and your mom is retired. Okay, I'll talk to my mother-in-law myself." Hiding irritation, said the girl. And in a few minutes, Adriana dialed Kathy's number. As soon as she picked up the phone, the daughter-in-law asked her to come to visit. The pensioner asked what was the purpose. Adriana almost responded by cursing her mother-in-law, but then she pulled herself together and politely said, "Just to check on your granddaughter. And in fact, I would like with you in confidence you can come tomorrow." "I will try," said the interlocutor, and immediately disconnected the connection. Adriana waited all the next day, but her mother-in-law didn't show up. Kathy came only 2 days later. She entered the apartment and glanced at her granddaughter and asked her what her daughter-in-law wanted from her. Adriana did not go around. Yes, she told her that she needed help. She explained that she could not cope with the duck, as the child only in her arms behaves calmly, and she has to do laundry, ironing, and cooking at home. Adriana asked her mother-in-law to come to them at least 3 times a week for 3 hours. Kathy didn't say a word. She listened and then said thoughtfully that she never thought her son would marry a country bumpkin who couldn't be a mother and a good housewife. Adriana felt anger boiling up inside her after her mother-in-law's words, but mentally she forced herself to calm down and said aloud, "I realize you don't like me, but your son made a choice and fell in love with me. And we live together. Soulmate. And I brought you here to ask for help, not to discuss me. Stephen and I are raising your granddaughter. You know, your granddaughter, not some stranger's girl. And that's the only reason I'm asking for your help. I don't need to make any pretty speeches right now. I'm a mother too, and I raised my son without any help from my family. I think you are just lazy as you don't have time to do everything when the baby is sleeping. Your son was not born sick like Stephen and I were, and you didn't have to give medications on a strict schedule. That's one thing. And secondly, our daughter sleeps restlessly if she lies in the crib any rustle and the baby wakes up, and Christina sleeps serenely only when she is in my arms. And so I just do not have enough time for household chores, as I am always with my daughter in my arms. You don't have to beg me with tears. I can come over twice a week for a couple hours. Now I have to go." Adriana saw her mother-in-law off and breathed a sigh of relief. She was even glad that the old woman would come twice a week, and as soon as her husband arrived, Adriana informed him that she had spoken to his mother, and they had agreed. Stephen nodded in agreement. It had been a month since Kathy had visited Adriana. And then the elderly woman told her sister-in-law that she was leaving for the sanatorium, so she would not come the day after tomorrow. Adriana looked at her mother-in-law in astonishment and was surprised, as there had been no talk about the sanatorium before. Adriana decided not to focus on it and tried to distract herself from these thoughts. A few days passed, and Adriana went out for a walk with her daughter. She wanted a stroller and quietly rode her daughter. As suddenly Stop Digging, the young woman saw her mother-in-law, who was getting out of her car. Kathy did not see her daughter-in-law. She was in a hurry to go to a fashion boutique. Meanwhile, Adriana could not get away from the fact that she had just seen a relative who was supposed to be in a sanatorium. Adriana came home after the walk in a bad mood. She wanted to tell her husband that her mother was a two-faced person, but she could not say anything because her daughter suddenly began to cry. And when Adriana touched the baby's forehead, she realized that the child had a fever. The woman called an ambulance, and she and Christina were hospitalized. As it turned out, subsequently the girl's kidneys made themselves known. Adriana spent a long time with her daughter in the hospital. After discharge, expensive medications were required. The man was angry that so much money was spent on pills and injections. Adriana saw that all this unnerved her loved one and calmed him as much as she could, saying that Christina would soon get better. However, 6 months later, the girl became ill again, and once again Adriana and her daughter went to the hospital. Stephen this time very rarely visited his wife and child. He told his wife that he had a lot of work at the bank. Adriana only sighed bitterly in response. After a while, the young woman and her daughter were discharged. The doctor immediately informed Adriana that surgery would likely be required if a recurrence occurred. Adriana replied that if it had to be done, she and her husband were ready. Time moved on, and Christina had already turned 1.5 years old, and the young woman already thought that the girl's disease had receded forever. But her expectations were not justified, as her daughter became ill again. And here is another hospitalization. This time Adriana already knew that there would be an operation and was ready for it. Soon the girl was operated. The doctor immediately informed the mother that now it will be necessary to go through a long rehabilitation period. The medic, after the discharge of the child, gave the woman a full list of instructions, how the daughter should be cared for. Adriana with Christina returned home. The girl was glad that now the hospital walls are behind her. She really hoped that her daughter would recover completely. And when she and Christina were taken from the hospital by her husband, she said so. Stephen only gave her husband a sullen look after these words. Life went on from there. Adriana tried to be a model wife and always welcomed her husband home from work. However, Adriana began to notice that lately her husband was often late at the bank, and it was also suspicious that Stephen, who was not a fan of nightclubs, suddenly became a regular. The woman tried to talk to her husband on the subject, but he replied, as soon as the conversation on the subject came up, that this way he relieves stress. After work, and lately Adriana has noticed another oddity in the behavior of her spouse. When her husband gets a phone call, he often goes out to talk on the stairwell. Woman, it seems suspicious. And when once again Stephen called and he went out, she quietly followed her chosen one. Adriana looked through the peephole and saw that her lover was standing with his back to her and talking to someone. Adriana opened the door a little and listened. Immediately, she heard her husband saying, "Shalva is not mine. I miss you too." As soon as Adriana heard this phrase, she was like an electric shock. She jerked the door open and looked angrily at her spouse. The man turned around and immediately assessed the situation. Stephen asked his spouse to come into the apartment and not to make a fight here. Adriana forced herself to do it, and as soon as her husband followed her into the hallway, she turned to him and wanted to slap him. But Stephen managed to intercept her hand, saying, "You're behaving like a countrywoman. Didn't you realize earlier that I had a woman on the side? We're civilized people and have a right to privacy. Are you saying that I can have a lover and go to him and have a good night out? You can't, as you're the one who has to keep the family home safe. And I, for your information, am the only one who brings money into our budget. And you're giving me a hard time about it. As soon as Christina turns 3, I'm going to go to work. It's only a couple months away. Don't talk nonsense. Where are you going to work if you haven't finished college? How about selling vegetables at the market? I won't let that happen. I don't need someone pointing a finger at me and telling me that a respectable banker's wife is a slave trader. I don't understand you, but you accused me of cheating. What's the big deal? I was expecting you to have a city permit. I support you and your daughter. I don't have to take your pathetic allowance into account because it's only enough for your medication. I don't beat you like other husbands do and keep you up all night. What else do you want? But you have a mistress. And for your information, I don't want to share you with any woman. If you don't hear me now, I will." With tears shouted the young woman and rushed to the kitchen, and after a few minutes returned back, presenting a knife to her wrist. Adriana did not say anything at that moment, but only looked at her husband, who realized from the look on his wife's face that she would do what she had planned. Stephen smiled gently at his wife and asked her to put down the cold weapon. And then the head of the family said that at this time they had overreacted. It is necessary to calm down and talk. The man, after these words, approached his wife and took the knife from her hands. Then he hugged her bare shoulder and gently kissed her where the tattoo was. The woman cried and snuggled into her husband's chest. Stephen stroked his wife's hair and asked her to stop shedding tears. Suddenly, the landlord lifted the face of the chosen one and said that he had an idea. Adriana, with tears in her eyes, she asked, "What do you want to propose?" "You should go to the village to your parents. You and Christina at least a little air and not be gassed by the air. It would do our daughter good. Especially you said yourself that soon we'll register for kindergarten, and she needs to gain strength before that. And where to do that? Not in the country. I'll think of something about your labor activity." Adriana listened to her husband's proposal in suspense and then exclaimed with indignation that Stephen had chosen her on purpose. She lived in the village so that she could have fun with other women. As if the man was ready for these words, so he hugged his wife again and gently in her ear said, "Do not talk nonsense. I'll even stay with you in the village for a few days. You and I are radically changing our lives for the better. I will not have any more trips to the side." "Did you mean it just now?" "Of course I mean it. Go ahead, call your mother and tell her you're coming soon. I'll take a few days off work tomorrow." Soon Adriana and her husband and daughter were in the village. Stephen stayed with his mother-in-law for 3 days and then returned to the city. When leaving, the man told his spouse that he would call every day. Adriana anxiously accompanied her beloved home. She was afraid that he would start seeing his mistress again. However, Stephen, as promised, called his wife every day and asked how she and her daughter spent their time. A month and a half had passed since Adriana had been living in the village with her daughter. The young woman missed her husband very much. And so, when he called and said that he was going home, Stephen did not particularly welcome his wife's decision, said that it would be possible to stay in the village longer. But Adriana refused and resolutely said, "If you do not come for us, in 2 days we will go ourselves with Christina." "No need, I will take you," replied the head of the family. 2 months had passed since Adriana had returned with her daughter from the village. During this time, they celebrated her birthday. Christina enrolled the girl in kindergarten. Stephen continued to work at the bank, and Adriana took care of household chores. Soon the young woman was bored with everyday life, and she turned to her husband. "You promised me a job. Isn't it time to do it? Is it bad for you to stay at home? I'm bored. I feel like a dependent." "Okay, I'll look into it one of these days." Adriana, after her husband's answer, hugged him and rejoiced in her heart. The woman piously believed that now there was a white streak in their family, and there would be no more sorrow. However, she was mistaken, because 2 weeks after this conversation, her daughter fell ill, and the girl was taken straight from kindergarten to the hospital. Christina's right kidney, Adriana, fell ill. After learning all the details from the doctor, she couldn't believe that her girl was back in the hospital bed. The woman questioned the doctor. How is this possible? After all, Christina had undergone surgery on this organ. The doctor answered the girl's mother using medical terms, and Adriana understood almost nothing from the words of the doctor. The woman was worried about her daughter's condition, and it was doubly hard for her when she visited Christina and the girl asked not to leave her alone. Adriana tried to explain to the child that the doctor wanted to help her, but could do it only in the hospital. The daughter, though, listened to her mother's words, but still asked her mother to stay with her again. The young woman realized that it was simply impossible to explain to her 3-year-old daughter to stay in the hospital. And once again, when Adriana came to visit Christina, the girl whimpered and began to ask to go home. The young woman, as before, began to soothe the child. She herself could hardly hold back her tears. This dialogue was observed by the post-nurse, who approached Adriana and said, "I understand you very well, how hard it is for you. I can only help in one way. When there will be my night shift, I will allow you to sleep with the girl in the room. I'll warn you that you'll have to sleep on a chair or a couch. But I'll do chairs in the hallway or even on the floor. How much do I owe you for this?" The nurse did not answer, but only smiled. Adriana immediately went to her daughter and told her that she would spend the night with her, but not every day. The little girl clapped her hands joyfully. And the mother at that moment thought how little a child needs for joy. Adriana. Now once every 4 days she slept over at her daughter's house. All other days the young woman was also at the hospital with Christina during the day. Adriana gave herself completely to caring for the girl. What was the use of a spouse who had taken a mistress? The woman found out about it by accident. It happened as follows. Adriana, as always, went to a sleepover with her daughter. But it turned out that the nurse was sick and was replaced by another nurse. Adriana tried to persuade the girl in the white coat to let her stay with Christina until morning. But the nurse replied that she had no right to do so and did not want to be reprimanded for making such a decision arbitrarily. Adriana had nothing left to do but to go home. The young woman quietly opened the door to the apartment and heard a woman's laughter. Adriana stopped like a halt. She listened and immediately recognized the guest's voice. It was her former college friend, who said it would be nice to be with you all the time and enjoy making love. "But that's what we do with you," in an excited voice, Stephen replied. Adriana didn't wait for Betty's reply and flashed into the living room where the couple was. Sitting on the couch in an embrace, Adriana threw herself at her rival, intending to claw at her hair. She was not allowed to do this. Spouse, who instantly oriented the man, hugged his beloved, and asked him to calm down. The young woman tried to break free, screaming that she was about to be torn to shreds by this mistress. Then Stephen commanded Betty, "Pack up and leave. We'll take care of this ourselves." The guest, smiling wryly, got up from the couch and sent a kiss to her former friend and went into the hallway. A few minutes later, the couple only heard the front door slam. Only after that, Stephen let go of his wife, who looked at him angrily. Adriana only wanted to shout hurtful phrases to her husband, but he beat her to it. "Pull yourself together. What did you want? You're always ending up in hospitals. You don't care about me. And I, too, need care and a woman's affection. That's what I found with Betty. So while I take care of my sick daughter and have fun, so like she's begging you for expensive medication, and you can afford champagne, which costs a lot of money. How am I supposed to understand you? I give all of myself only to you and my daughter, and you're saving me such a pig. I'm asking you, let's not use big words and mutual insults. It's just that I've already explained to you that I lacked female attention. Now I'll give you a woman's attention." In hysterics, the young woman and rushed to the window, which opened wide. Adriana quickly climbed on the windowsill and fervently said, "If you lack attention, you will have it. I'm about to step off the 3rd floor and you'll be alone with your daughter. That's when you will have attention, because Christina will stay with you and you will have to take care of her. And if you fulfill your fatherly duties well, our daughter will provide you with care in your old age. Then you'll have a woman's attention in your old age. Think of your daughter. Why do you only care about yourself?" The man said, and made a step towards his wife. And at the same moment he heard the exasperated voice of his wife. "Stay away. We need to clarify the relationship once and for all. You have to promise to stop going to women. You know very well that I can do this deed at this moment." The man saw that his wife was in a hysterical state, and Stephen decided that now was not the best occasion to clarify the relationship. So he constantly apologized to his beloved and got down on one knee in front of Adriana, quietly saying, "Come down. I only now realized how much we love each other, and also realized that how much grief I'd brought you in this life. I'm sorry." Adriana looked incredulously at her lover, who continued to speak beautiful words. The young woman distrustfully stretched out her hands to him, and the man hurriedly removed his wife from the windowsill. He promised that he would have no more liaisons with women on the side. Adriana, hearing Stephen give her his word, immediately cried out, "And you already promised me that. What happened in the end? I find you alone with Betty. I told you it wouldn't happen again. Let's talk about your daughter. Tell me how she's doing." As soon as they talked about the girl, Adriana forgot about what had happened here the other day. The young woman told her that she had not been able to stay with her daughter for the night, and immediately told her that there was good news. Adriana said that Christina would be discharged in 2 days. The man, after his wife's words, hugged her and noted that the latest news is joyful. Soon the girl was discharged. Adriana put her daughter back in daycare and reminded her husband about the conversation about work. A few days passed after Christina was discharged, and Adriana noticed that her spouse was now dropping calls when called, and after a while would lock himself in the bathroom with the phone. Adriana had a woman's intuition that her husband was doing this for a reason. He clearly continues to communicate with Betty even though he doesn't see her, as the chosen one was on time from work. Adriana realized that there was no point in talking to her husband about his communication with his ex-girlfriend, and the girl decided that it was worth talking to her mother-in-law about it. Adriana took her daughter to kindergarten in the morning and immediately went to Stephen's mother. Kathy met her daughter-in-law warily, as the daughter-in-law rarely showed up unannounced. The landlady invited her into the hall and asked what had brought Adriana to visit. The young woman did not go around and around, but said straight away, "Your son is cheating on me. I'd like you to influence Stephen. I've spoken to him several times, but our conversation is going nowhere. Stephen keeps looking at other women. I wonder about that in particular." With a chuckle, Kathy said, and immediately continued, "If my son is not satisfied, how can I influence him? I see only one way out. You need to divorce, and the whole problem will be solved." "What do you mean, divorce? Stephen and I have a child together. Besides, my daughter's not in good health. And on top of all that, I love my husband. Stephen is now in a relationship with an ex-girlfriend of mine. And believe me, she has no interest in your son. Betty is just trying to get back at me because Stephen chose me over her. All I'm asking you to do is talk to your son, because his family is falling apart. I know Stephen listens to your word. Everything you've told me hasn't touched me in the slightest. But for my part, I promise I'll talk to my son. I think this is the end of our conversation, because I have to go to the tourist center. By the way, I wanted to tell you that you should go to the gym too, since you have some extra pounds that don't look good on you." Adriana did not reply to her mother-in-law's barbs. The young woman hurried to leave Kathy's apartment. Adriana thought that a conversation between mother and son would at least change the situation, and perhaps after a dialogue with her mother, her husband would stop communicating with Betty. In the meantime, Kathy, 2 days after the arrival of her daughter-in-law, called her son and asked him to come alone. Stephen complied with his mother's request, and in the evening, having warned his wife that he would be late, went to his mother. And now the man sits opposite his mother in the living room and looks at her questioningly. The elderly woman smiled at her son and asked how his family relations were. Stephen shrugged and mumbled that it wasn't bad. And at the same moment, Kathy sternly mumbled that she would like to know the true answer. And at once added the daughter-in-law, "The other day she complained to me that you were truanting. Tell me, why should I listen to this from the village Lockhorns? I don't know why she came to you. I'm not seeing anyone at the moment, and I'm tired of it all." "Of what exactly?" the landlady asked calmly. "I'm tired of the constant whims of my daughter. I realize that she is sick, but I cannot bear to hear often her crying. I'm sick and tired of my wife constantly controlling my every move. You know very well I like variety, and I've been known to go out on the side. But she knew that when she got married. Now she wants a model family man who admires only her. If things are so bad, why don't you just get a divorce? Make her choose. Either Adriana accepts you for who you are, or you work things out and live each on your own. It's so easy for you to talk about it. I've thought about it before and even said I was entitled to my own space. So she started scaring me about taking her own life. The man said irritably and rubbed his temples nervously with his palms. It is possible that your spouse is manipulating you with such actions. They are simple threats to make you live by her rules. Women often use such tricks, but they don't really mean to take their own lives. Mom, did you see her when she grabbed the knife? One more careless word from me and Adriana would have carried out her threat. And to test the fate of a wife who would or would not do such a thing. I have no desire to do so. Imagine her throwing herself out of a window in front of me. How would I live with that for the rest of my life? I'm in a vicious circle and I don't know how to get out of it. I just don't have the energy. Okay, well, don't lose heart. I'll think about what to do about the situation. After talking to his mother, Stephen went home, where Adriana was waiting for him. The girl immediately, as soon as she saw her husband, asked why he went to Kathy. The head of the family did not talk about the topic of the conversation and lied to the chosen one that his mother asked him to come to fix the plumbing. Adriana immediately hinted that the lover lied, since in such cases the mother-in-law always called the master. They invited her son to help. Several days passed. Adriana still saw that Stephen continued to communicate with the former girlfriend, and she gave him a scandal, reminding him that he would kill himself if he did not stop behaving like that. The man, barely containing his irritation, explained to his wife that Betty herself was calling him and asking to talk to her. Adriana offered to let her talk to Betty herself. Stephen only wanted to answer the chosen one. His mother called and asked him to come over. The head of the family, after a short conversation with his mom, said that yes, they are talking on the subject. As soon as he returns from Kathy, Adriana, before leaving, asked what was the occasion for which his mother called him. At this late hour, the man pronounced that he did not know and would tell her when he returned. Soon Stephen was at his mother's house and told her about the altercation with his wife. The man told it all in an irritated tone. Kathy could see that his son really couldn't bear to live like this. The older woman shook her head and said, "I have an idea. Your wife is afraid of losing you. Perhaps she really loves you with some special love, that she is ready to stop living if you are not around. But you can send your spouse to a remote village where there is no cell phone service for a while, ostensibly to heal the daughter, but only for a long time. And it is quite possible that she will meet a man there with whom she will fall in love. This is not a solution, as I sent her to the village to her parents. She lived there for a month and a half and dreamed, and only about me." With bitterness replied the son, "Wait to immediately cancel this option," which I suggested. First, when Adriana was at her parents', there was a connection, and we called every day, not letting each other forget about themselves. And secondly, she was only away for a month and a half, and in my case, I proposed to take her to the middle of nowhere for 6 months, while inventing a fairy tale for her. The conspirator mumbled Kathy and looked at his son with a testing look. The man hesitated. The landlady did not hurry him. She realized that Stephen had to think things over carefully to make a decision. About 20 minutes passed before Stephen spoke. He said to his mother, "Perhaps there is truth in what you say, and it is worth the risk of doing something like this. But where would I find such a place? And then how can I persuade Adriana to go there? After all, she will think that I live on her right side on purpose, so that I can have fun in my absence. On the subject of persuasion, then here is my motherly advice to you. For a start, become for a time approximately husband, at least for a month. Give Adriana gifts. Pay as much attention to your daughter as you can. You have to put your spouse's attention to sleep so that she believes that there is harmony in the family again. and by no means even socialize with yourselves. Tell them you're in the middle of a divorce so they won't bug you for a while. Now, as to where to find such a place, I think the ideal would be to take your spouse to a remote village where there is no communication, but there is a witch doctor. This way, you'll kill two birds with one stone. On the one hand, maybe this nickname will cure Christina, and on the other hand, you'll probably achieve a painless divorce. And if it doesn't work, barely audible, said Stephen, then you will live and be happy with your Adriana, whom you chose to marry. You have no other option how to act in this situation. So do it. Stephen thanked his mother for her cooperation and was about to leave. Just then, he remembered that he had promised his wife to tell her why he had called his mother to his house. Kathy laughed and said that her son was still an unreasonable child, although he often changed partners. And then the older woman added that Adriana had to tell part of the truth. The man looked at his mother with incomprehension, who said, "Tell her that you had an explanatory talk with you about the fact that you do not devote enough time to your family, and also scolded you about cheating. Let Adriana think I'm on her side. Now go with God to your beloved." Stephen soon arrived home and was immediately approached by his wife about his trip to his mother. The man told his wife as Kathy had advised, and the head of the household instantly caught the mood of his wife, who was amused. Stephen thought to himself what a wise mother he had Adriana, in turn mentally thanked her mother-in-law that she did not stand aside and stood up for her. Time moved forward unhurriedly. Adriana could not enjoy family life. Her husband often began to say compliments to her, tried to help with household chores, often played with his daughter, which was previously very rare. All these changes in the behavior of the spouse caused enthusiastic Adriana, and she decided to thank her mother-in-law for her help. The young woman bought a bouquet of flowers and a small cake. Then she called Mother Stephen and asked permission to come over. Kathy said in a unified voice that it was not necessary to warn her about her visit, and she could come whenever she wanted. And a short time later, Adriana was sitting at her mother-in-law's house, saying thank you to the landlady. The elderly woman listened to her daughter-in-law and realized that her son had done the right thing, as the daughter-in-law believed that her spouse had completely changed. And as soon as Adriana stopped talking, the mother-in-law uttered, "I am glad that you are doing well. Now you and your husband need to work on your daughter's health. Maybe find a healer. A lot of people are turning to them these days. You know, my husband just told me that the day before yesterday. You must have told him that, right?" "Yes," Stephen called and we talked about it. "But you're a mother, and you're the only one who can make that decision. I would do anything for my daughter's health. Thank you again for everything. I can't believe we're having this kind conversation right now." Soon, Adriana returned home. She was anxiously awaiting her husband's return. And as soon as Stephen appeared in the apartment, she told him about her visit to her mother-in-law. The head of the family hugged her husband and said that he had made some inquiries and found a healer who lived in a remote village. Adriana looked at her husband with interest and asked him to tell about this healer. The husband sat down in a chair and said that in one village there lived an old man who helped people, but he had to live with him for a while to get rid of the disease. And the man added that there are rumors about this healer that he cures even hopelessly ill people. The girl, hearing this, smiled happily and told her husband that it was necessary to go to this healer. The husband was satisfied, nodded and replied that tomorrow he would contact this grandfather. A day later, Stephen said that he had to go to the old man's village to make arrangements for the healer to see them. Adriana sadly asked the chosen one whether it was impossible to call this man. The head of the family said that there was no connection where the old man lived. There was nothing left for the girl to do but to accept her husband's decision. It was 3 days before Stephen left for the country, and now he had returned home. The man told his wife that the healer was waiting for them. The woman asked how long she would be in the wilderness. Stephen replied that the healer would give her the exact answer. But the same man warned her that it would be at least 2 months for sure. Adriana became upset after these words. This was noticed by the head of the family and asked why she became sad. The girl replied, "We will be with you in separation, and I will not even hear your voice. Think not about that now, but about the fact that we will cure Christina, and you're gonna hear my voice every day. I'm gonna record your speech for you, but you'll get that tape when you're already living at Grandpa's house." Wow, that's a great idea. Now get your things together. We're gonna have to leave soon. You know, it's a good thing we decided to send you and your daughter to this healer over the summer. A few days later, Adriana, her husband and daughter were on their way by car to the village. The woman dreamed of only one thing: that time would fly by, and she would return home with a healthy daughter, and she and her husband would never be separated for such a long period of time again. And Stephen mentally thanked fate that everything was going so smoothly. Soon the car pulled onto the village roads and raced over the bumps. The man mentally thanked that he had to drive on such a broken road. The wife saw that her husband resented it and tried her best to calm him down. After a while, the car entered a small village. Stephen stopped at an extreme hut and asked his wife to stay in the car. He himself got out of the car. Stephen approached the house where he was chopping wood. There was a man in the yard. Adriana's husband approached the stranger. "Hello, sir. We're looking for Christopher. Where can we find him?" "Strangers. You can tell you've come to see him for treatment, but he's not here. It's Thursday, which is the day he goes into town every 2 weeks to get supplies. Today's the day. Can you tell me where his house is? You can tell he's not from around here. He has an old hut here, but he doesn't live here much. Christopher lives in the woods. He's a woodsman and a wanderer in one. Help me get my wife and child there. Christopher knows we're coming. A friend of mine arranged it, but he forgot to tell me that on Thursdays the healer goes into town, and I'll pay you well for this favor. I just don't have time to wait here for a healer. There's plenty of work to do in town. Well, if you pay me, that's good, but you can't get there by car. It's a boat ride down the river. And believe me, that's a lot of gasoline. And I'll tell you right away, I'm not going to wait there for long. I'll just take you back to the village. I've got a lot to do too. I can see that. I'll pay for the gas too. But please do not say anything unnecessary to my wife for this additional payment." The interlocutor looked at Stephen suspiciously and nodded his head. And then the man told him to wait for a while. In the meantime, Stephen went to the car, took out his things, and asked his spouse to get out of the car, explaining to her that they would now drive the motor. Adriana was surprised and wanted to ask him some questions, but he firmly replied that it was not the time to talk. 15 minutes later, the woman and her child were already getting into the motor. Stephen immediately warned that the wigs would not go as he was seasick. Adriana asked her husband in farewell when he would eat them. The head of the household replied that he would arrive here in a month and live here for a week. This message from her husband cheered up the woman's spirits, and she sent him an air kiss. Soon the motor was pumping away from the shore. The woman clasped her daughter to her side and regarded a glimpse of the scenery. She thought about the fact that she would have to spend so much time without the person she loved. The thought made her sad, but the woman tried to shift her attention to the fact that her daughter's health depended on this trip. How long the boat ride Adriana didn't clock, but she felt that her legs had already clocked up. That's when the woman asked the man how much farther to the destination. The counselor replied that one more turn and they would arrive, and already Adriana and her child had landed on dry land. The man pointed to a tube and said that it was necessary to go up on a hill and there would be a healer's hut. Adriana bewilderedly asked the stranger if he would help her carry her things up to the hut. The man nodded reluctantly, picked up the bag and the child's backpack, and walked down the path. And the woman followed him, leading the child by the hand. As soon as they climbed the hillside, the girl saw an unassuming cabin. Then a sheepdog ran up to them and started barking loudly at her. Adriana was frightened and clung to her daughter, who was already crying with fear. The man softly said flatulence to the dog. "Ugh, don't scare the guests," and after these words turned to his companion. I will lead you into the house, and you will wait there. I don't have time to stay here. I've got a lot to do, and it's a long way home, as you've already noticed. Don't be afraid of the dog. The dog is smart." In a few minutes, the woman and the child were already in the hut. Adriana looked around the house and thought that this was where she would have to spend 2 months, maybe more. The woman was a little stunned. So since she thought she would be living in the village, but it turned out to be in the middle of nowhere. It was already evening when Adriana heard the sound of a motor. She realized that Christopher had arrived. The young woman mentally prepared herself for the meeting with the healer. As soon as the man entered the hut, the girl immediately said hello. The grandfather looked at the guest and not friendly asked what she was doing here. Adriana was confused by this question and inarticulately said that there was an agreement about her arrival. Christopher lit a makeshift lamp, illuminated the woman's face, and then said sternly, "And with whom I wondered that I will have a young person, and even with a child. You are doctors, the hotel, and my husband recently came to you to help us cure our daughter. He said he'd have to stay here for a while, and that's the instruction you gave him. That's the most heresy I've ever heard in my life. All right, I can see the raid already. You're not getting out of the house. You're gonna be here till morning, and then you're gonna show me all of your daughter's medical records. I'll see if there's anything I can do to help, and then we'll decide what to do with you. One more thing, nobody made any arrangements with me about you. Now I'll quickly prepare dinner, then we'll put the baby to bed, and you'll tell me everything in detail. But maybe my friend made arrangements with you through an acquaintance, not directly." With tears in her eyes, said the woman, "I have already explained to you that I did not have such a conversation on this topic. Let's understand everything a little later." After these words, the man began to sort out the products that he brought from the city. And then he made a small fire outside, where he piled sausages and potatoes on a frying pan. And after that, Christopher invited the woman and her daughter to have dinner. Soon Christina was put to bed, and the elderly man asked to tell how the woman found herself here. He listened to the guest's story and began to clarify what Stephen had said about him. Then he asked the grandfather a few questions that interested him. "Tell me, my dear, if your husband had made an arrangement with me about you, why did I not meet you then? And also, why didn't your husband himself bring you here and wait for me? I don't know. Perhaps you had urgent business and had to leave, and he didn't come here because he's been seasick since childhood. Don't you find your own answers funny? What do you want me to say? I don't understand what's going on." Crying bitterly, the young woman said, "Calm down." The grandfather whispered further, so that Adriana would not hear. "But it seems to me that I understand everything." The next morning, the old man got up very early. He went to the lake, which was not far from the hut. The grandfather caught fish and boiled some soup, and then went to wake up the woman and the child. Christopher entered the house in a cheerful voice and said that it was time to get up and have breakfast. Adriana did not immediately realize when she woke up. Where was she? The woman looked around confused and immediately remembered yesterday. Adriana wished the healer a good morning and hurried to her daughter, who had already opened her eyes. The elderly man offered to wash her face, guessed from standing water in a bucket, and invited to breakfast. As soon as everyone had eaten, the forester asked for medical documents. He studied them for a long time and then said that there was hope for recovery, but the treatment needed to be done in stages. Adriana looked fearfully at Christopher and told him how long it would take. The interlocutor, smiling, replied that it would take at least 6 months. The woman shrieked and said, "We can't stay in this wilderness without civilization for so long. There are no necessary conditions for a small child to live here, and I am not forcing you to live here. You have to make your own decision. Do you want your daughter to get well or not? That's up to you. I can tell you this about the conditions. During the war, people lived in worse conditions, and mothers would do anything to cure their children. But I have a husband who will worry about me." With tears in her eyes, said the woman. Husband said, "Come on. Tell me about your life with him. while I prepare a potion of herbs. For your daughter, only one agreement, that you tell the truth and without any exaggerations." The woman lowered her head and began her story in a quiet voice. The man, meanwhile, was pulling out various pouches from the right basket, which he spread out on a makeshift section on the board. From the outside, it might have seemed that the healer was only busy with his work, but it was not so. Christopher listened attentively to the girl, and as soon as she was silent, said, "You know what I'll tell you, dearie. It will sound harsh, but it's true. Your whole life with this Stephen is a misunderstanding. And believe me, you're only here because your husband didn't know how to get rid of you. So when he found out I was helping people, he decided to keep you here. I can even say that your husband is not a stupid man, because he chose a village where there is no communication, so that in the near future you could not contact him. I don't believe that. Stephen and I have an excellent relationship lately. I've even made contact with my mother-in-law, even though I thought it would be impossible." She exclaimed in a passionate tone, "Maybe it can't. And your mother-in-law just has a cunning mind. Well, I will not argue with you. I can offer you only one option to live here for a month. I'll be tutoring your daughter during that time. And you wait for your husband, who said he'd visit you. Then we'll see which one of us was right in our speculation. It's up to you. You tell me to take you now. I'll do it, no problem." The woman thought for a moment, and then realized that there was some truth in Christopher's words. She agreed to the older man's proposal and immediately asked what she had to do. The man laughed in response and said that the only thing she would be required to do was to cook. And if there is a desire, then watch over the vegetable garden. The girl looked at the forester in amazement and asked a question, "Do you have a vegetable garden here?" "Of course, I live here almost all the time. I only go to the village on Saturday with an overnight stay to receive the sick who occasionally come there. Now I'm going, and I'll show you my grounds." It had been a week since Adriana and her daughter, living in the forest wilderness. The woman tried not to think that her husband could have acted in the way the witch doctor had written. She thought there had been a misunderstanding. It even occurred to her that her husband had simply mistaken the healer and brought her to the wrong person. Adriana waited until a month had passed, and she had traveled to the village to see her husband. The week before she met Stephen, her grandfather did not arrive from the village alone. Adriana and Christina watched Christopher walk out onto dry land. In doing so, he pulled the goat behind him on a rope. This scene made the girl and the woman laugh. They watched as the old man tried to pull the animal onto dry land. It turned out, while doing so, it bumps and vomits loudly. As soon as the elderly man managed to do it, then he lowered himself to the ground and panting, said, "And I thought that the most stubborn animal is a donkey. Turns out I was wrong. This goat." Adriana asked curiously, "Why climb into this animal?" The old man grinned and answered that he had long dreamed of a goat because the steamy milk is good for people at his age. And then the man added that Christina also needed to consume this product. Adriana marveled at the words of the healer because he had never brought a goat before. And as soon as the girl appeared, he immediately bought the animal and brought it here. A few weeks passed as the woman lived with Christopher. During this time, she learned how to fish, how to milk the goat. The elderly man himself prepared herbal collections that he gave to the girl from day to day. It was exactly 1 month after Adriana separated from her husband, and the woman started talking in the morning about going to the village. The forester did not interrupt and suggested that they set off immediately. Soon Adriana and her daughter and grandfather were already in the village. They came to the only road that went from the town to the village and sat down on a fallen tree. Adriana often climbed up to see her spouse's familiar automobile, but it was still gone. Hour after hour passed. There was already a bus that came here once a day, but there was no Stephen there either. The woman looked dejectedly at the road and intuitively realized that she would not see her husband today. Adriana turned to Christopher. "Perhaps my husband had arrived earlier when we were on the road. He must have waited for us, and without waiting, left. "I don't know what to do now. If you want to spend the night here in my house, I'll take you back to town tomorrow. But my daughter still has to drink your potion for a month. Maybe in a month we'll sail early to the village, and I'll meet my husband." "I'm not sure," she suggested. "Have it your way. And now it's time to go to our lair to make it before dark." Time moved on, and another month of Adriana's life in this godforsaken place was approaching. A few days before going to the village, the woman had asked an elderly man why he was dwelling. Here an old man sighed sorrowfully and pronounced that it was a long story. Adriana touched the woodsman's arm and said that she had plenty of time. She asked him to tell her about his life. Christopher made himself comfortable on her and began his story. Christopher was born in a family where his parents worked as doctors, and when he grew up, he also chose the specialty of medicine. But only the young man decided to become a paramedic. He was invited that he would rush in an ambulance to save someone's life. And in a short time, Christopher graduated from the educational institution and got a job. The young man worked a year in an ambulance, and then he got a call. He went to the exit of the patient was a 19-year-old girl, Clara, who had a heart condition. She was rushed to the hospital. As the girl was being wheeled on a gurney to the hospital, Christopher suddenly shook her hand and told her that she would be fine. After this call, several days passed, and the young man could not forget the eyes of that girl, and he decided to visit her. The man easily recognized the ward where the patient was lying, and soon stood near the girl's hospital bed with a bag of fruit and a bouquet of flowers. Clara immediately recognized the paramedic and asked him, "What are you doing here?" "I decided to visit the pretty maiden." "Don't say flattering words that you don't believe yourself. In my orphanage, they used to call a lock a lid to my face. They're stupid people who didn't see your beauty." And then Christopher, with the girl's permission, sat down next to her, and they began to talk. Initially, the young man told about himself, and then asked the new acquaintance about her life. She was embarrassed and said that she did not have much information to tell about herself. But Christopher insisted on his own, and the girl said that she did not know her parents, as her mother abandoned her in the maternity hospital. After that, she went to an orphanage, where she spent her childhood and adolescence. And after the state allocated her a one-room apartment, and she then went to medical school. After this visit, Christopher more than once came to the girl, and when she was discharged, he himself took from the hospital. From that time, the young people began to meet a month after meeting. The guy confessed his love and offered his hand and heart. The girl responded with consent. And as soon as the man heard the word beloved, he said, "You are my marriage cap for life, and I won't give you to anyone. But there is one thing. I know that you work part-time as a nurse at night. Well, you're quitting tomorrow. That kind of work is not good for you. You study in the morning and work at night. What do you say, future husband?" Soon the couple applied, and then had a modest wedding. Christopher moved to live with his wife, and the young people began to master family life. At first it was not easy, as there was often not enough money, but the newlyweds tried not to fight about it. And strangely enough, they succeeded. After a while, she graduated from college and got a job as a nurse. And at the same time, Christopher expressed a desire to become a doctor of homeopathy. He entered the institute by correspondence, and after some time acquired a profession, on which he began his labor activity. And at the same moment, he learned that his wife was in a position. For the couple, it was a joyful event. They were already dreaming of a baby. After a while, Slaga gave birth to a healthy baby boy, who was named John. The son grew up a healthy boy to the joy of his parents. When John was 3 years old, he was enrolled in kindergarten. Christopher thought that he was the happiest person because he had a woman he loved and a son he loved, as well as a job that gave him pleasure. As the years went by, when John turned 14 years old, his grandparents passed away suddenly within a year. Christopher then moved with his family to live in his father's apartment. It was decided to rent out the one-room apartment and save the money for a summer house. Some more time passed, and John graduated from school with a silver medal and then entered medical school. The parents of the young man were happy for their son and dreamed that he would become a highly qualified specialist in the future. However, the happiness of the family broke overnight. John began to feel ill when John was studying in the 3rd year. The woman was examined and a brain tumor was added to the heart disease. Christopher, as if was crushed by this diagnosis, but the man in no way showed it to his spouse. Soon she was put in the hospital. She lay there for some time, but the attending physician said that it was better to take the woman to a Moscow clinic. Christopher, having collected his savings, immediately went to the capital. The woman underwent many necessary procedures. A lot of money was spent, but nothing helped. She was getting worse day by day. The son demanded that his father take his mother abroad, and Christopher was already ready for this. He sold his car, as well as the dacha, which had recently been purchased, and was preparing for the trip. As he was approached by his wife, who said, "Don't go abroad. I will not survive this trip. You are a medical professional yourself, and you understand everything. I don't have much time left. It is better to leave these finances, son, and do not get angry at him that he insists on traveling abroad. He's still a young and hot guy. As they say, life doesn't burn him. Don't talk nonsense. We'll get you back on your feet," the man said firmly. "Don't talk about it. Try your own strength to cure me. They say love heals. Maybe you can do it. I just want to spend my last days with you and know that my 2 favorite men are doing well." Christopher looked at the woman he loved and tears involuntarily ran down his eyes, which he could not stop. He realized that she was telling the truth about the fact that his wife had only a few days to live, but it hurt him that his beloved knew about it. After all, she's a doctor. And Clara, seeing the tears of her husband, quietly said, "Do not mourn for me if I go to the next world, then with a peaceful soul, because we lived a life worthy. You better buy a house somewhere and let me spend the rest of my days there, where you will feed me with healing creatures." "All right, my love, I will." Christopher told his son of his decision. John, when he found out that his father was going to go to the backwoods instead of abroad, was furious. They had a big fight between them, and in the meantime, Christopher quit his job, and he was already the head of the hospital there. And then he found a small village where he bought a small house and moved there with his wife. The woman lived in the village for a little over 6 months. Christopher prepared a potion for his wife, but realized that it was all useless. And often at night, when the chosen one fell asleep restless son, he went out into the yard and quietly whimpered because he could not change the situation. Died in the early morning, but before that the woman managed to say that she loved her son and Christopher very much, and also asked her husband to bury her in this area. She said it was beautiful and easy to breathe. After these words, she took a deep breath and fell asleep forever. Christopher fulfilled his wife's request and stayed here for good. He did not want to leave his native and beloved man alone after 2 years, as he did not become a wife. A man in the city learned the courses of a forester and got a job in the forestry, having moved into the wilderness. After this story, Christopher looked at Adriana, who was sitting, breathless, and tears were streaming down her face. It was as if the young woman could feel how this older man had gone to any lengths to be with his beloved forever. The forester touched Adriana's arm and looked at her carefully. The girl did not know what to say to this man, nor could she, since there was a lump in her throat. Christopher patted Adriana's hand and said that the time was late and it was time to go to bed. A few days passed, and Adriana and her grandfather and Christina went to the village again. The woman did not really hope to see her husband again. She didn't understand why she felt this way. The forester's story kept replaying in her mind, and Adriana involuntarily thought that it was Christopher's story that prevented her from believing that her husband would appear before she got into the motor. The girl suddenly inquired of the elderly man, does the son know that it was Clara who wished to settle in the village? The grandfather looked sadly at Adriana and shook his head negatively. And then he heard another question from the woman he was talking to. "How often do you see John? We parted in an uneasy relationship. I've lived here for almost 12 years now, and in that time, John has been twice. Every fourth year, he comes for 3 days. My son told me himself that he would come every 4 years. Why that number? I don't know. He's supposed to come next summer. Soon the man, woman, and child were already in the village and sitting in the tree again. Adriana did not jump up to see if a car was coming along the road. Then a man passed by them who was taking Adriana and her daughter to the place where the healer lived. The girl told this to Christopher, who immediately stopped the fellow villager and said, "Do you not remember? Prokopovich took this person with a child to me a couple of months ago." "I remember, of course." "What happened? Tell me how he acted. I can voice it in front of the young lady." "You're not sure?" asked Lawson. "You can, and you should," Adriana said boldly. "He was a strange guy. He paid double cab fare and told me not to say anything to his wife. I thought he was coming with us to take his wife to her destination. He's got some kind of seasickness thing going on. Any reasonable man wouldn't let a beautiful woman go alone with a stranger." "You see what he did," Lawson said. Christopher looked at Adriana, who smiled sadly, and then said that it was time to go back to the goat. And then she added that it was very difficult to milk in the dark. The woman took her daughter by the hand and went first to the river. As soon as they reached the motor, the forester turned Adriana to face him and said, "I understand that you have made conclusions for yourself. What are you going to do? Treat my daughter further. You said that 2 months to drink from Varia, and then a month of rest. That's 2 months gone. Now we'll take an active vacation." Trying not to cry, mumbled a young woman. "Do you mean that you are ready to live here for a few more months?" "Of course I am. It's all for my daughter's health. You don't understand. As in your life story. I've had my whole soul ripped out of me. I would have done anything to live with Stephen. I couldn't imagine living without him. And I realize now that he doesn't need me or my daughter. After all, a loving man would have wanted to know how his wife and daughter were living all this time. And here is silence. You left everything for your beloved and came here. You had a prestigious position in the city, surely a good position in society, and you even the desire of the woman you love went to conflict with his own son. And I have nothing to expect from Stephen, since I'm nothing to him. I'm sure this man is now tumbling around with my ex-girlfriend, and he's free to keep it that way. What's important to me right now is to cure Christina, and then we'll see how I move on. You need to think about your decision with a clear head, and they're emotional right now. Now let's go home. It is really uncomfortable to milk in the dark," the old man said in reply. The next morning, Adriana was the first to get up. She went out of the hut and looked at the nature. She liked to contemplate the forest and breathe in the fresh air. And at that time, Christopher approached her quietly and asked her how she had slept last night. The girl turned to the older man and answered that she had slept better than ever. And then the forester asked, "Now you must decide for sure whether you will stay here or be taken to town. You need to know that now, because very soon summer will be over and fall will come. It can be hard to get out of here. It's often hard to get out here. It rains so hard that the river overflows its banks, and in winter there is a blizzard that you don't want to show your nose from your hut. I told you yesterday I'm staying. You taught me how to fish, and now it's time for me to learn how to hunt. Although I guess it's not really my thing. If you've made up your mind, you're a good girl. Now it's just a matter of building a barn for the goat, making hay, and of course, buying you appropriate clothing for the season. There's something for you in my late car stuff, if you're not squeamish, of course. Christina, on the other hand, will have to buy everything new. Of course, I won't be squeamish. What are you talking about? You know, I feel bad. I don't even have the money to pay for it. Oh, wait a minute. Here's the engagement ring and the gold earrings Stephen gave me. You could pawn all that jewelry and you'd have money. Stop talking nonsense. I have the means. How much do I need on my own? I haven't spent much over the years. I wanted to give it to my son. I gave it to him, and he gave it back to me. So save your gold for a rainy day. Next Thursday, we'll go into town, do a little shopping. We'll get Christina a doll and buy her some books. And I made the Barbie nursery myself. It won't be worse than the store ones. Time flew by. Autumn passed, and then winter came. Adriana enjoyed watching the seasons change, and in each month she found its own charm. What did the latter man often talk about? The elderly man listened to her interlocutor and told her that she had a talent for writing. Because of the way she painted colorfully the seasons, soon it was spring. The man started the vegetable garden. Adriana was helping him with it. Christina also demanded that the adults give her a job. Christopher, in order not to offend the child, gave the girl millet and asked her to pick it. Initially, Christina did it with passion, but soon she got bored with it and demanded a shovel. This statement puzzled the forester, and he promised the child that as soon as Thursday came, he would buy her a children's set of vegetable gardeners and set aside a special place for planting. Spring flew by and summer came. The young woman already realized that it was impossible to stay here forever. In just a couple of years, Christina would have to go to school. Adriana knew that Christopher was thinking about it, too, who had already gotten used to having Adriana and the little girl, whom he loved as his own granddaughter, living next to him. So Adriana decided that it was time to talk to the forester about her return to town. She was going to do it in the morning, but as soon as she got up, she saw that the old man was going shopping. And she damned their news to herself, since she had completely forgotten that it was Thursday and her grandfather was going to town. The elderly man asked what to buy, and the girl quickly wrote a list of groceries, which she held out to Christopher. Soon the forester sailed off to the motor. The woman decided to clean up the hut, the more so her daughter was busy drawing. The girl collected half and raised the floors, then washed everywhere and looked over her work. After that, Adriana began to prepare the first course. She habitually made a fire and put water on the fire in the column. Somehow she heard the roar of a motor. The girl thought that another fisherman went fishing. However, the motor swam to the shore and a middle-aged man came out of it. The stranger looked at the young woman with surprise and asked what she was doing here. Adriana was outraged by this question. And Adriana said, "You are the one who owes me an explanation as to why you came here." "Good acquaintance. Well, I'll start by explaining. I'm here to visit Christopher's father." The young woman stared at the forester's son with all her eyes and then splayed her hands and said loudly, "So you are John," and immediately added sternly, "Good son. He doesn't know what's wrong with his father. And he comes once every 4 years. Wow, I'm getting hit on by a wood nymph. This is a very interesting situation." The man said with a chuckle, "I won't stop you from having fun. Tell the father that his son came," and he opened. John stopped talking as he saw Christina come out of the house. The man was silent for a while, but then he said, "And this is my father, who pretends to be a devoted husband to my mother when he has already made a child." After these words, John turned around and went to the motor. And immediately afterwards I heard, "Such asses as you, it is necessary to search for more. Your father is a golden man who still loves Clara. That's the only reason he lives here and doesn't move to the city. And you should be ashamed of yourself for thinking so badly of your own father." "What did you say? You don't know anything. Dad brought Mom here when the doctors could have helped her." And the man was interrupted at the same moment by Adriana, who said in a calmer voice, "Shut up, ignoramus, and listen to what I'm about to tell you. Your mother knew she was going to die soon, and it was she who persuaded your father to bring her here. I don't know why I kept it from you, Christopher, but I can tell you with certainty that I have never seen such love as that between your parents." And then the young woman was already telling about herself, how the couple got here after they learned about each other and remembered their acquaintance and laughed. And then the girl asked what John hadn't said when she interrupted him. The man smiled and said that he wanted to inform his father that he now had his own clinic. And at the same moment the couple heard a motor pull up, out of which Christopher got out with his bags. The elderly man saw his son and wept, and at the same time John rushed towards him and began to apologize for being such a stupid man. Soon Adriana was leaving the forester, but not only in the company of his daughter, but also John. The healer's son promised his father that he would show the girl to specialists and in the near future report on the results of treatment. And as it turned out, healing courage actually helped Christina, since the tests turned out to be good. Several years have passed. During this time, Adriana divorced Stephen and married John. They had a child together. It was a boy who was named Ignat. The couple took turns telling Adriana's parents during the summer and then going to the countryside to visit John's father. Only now Adriana realized that she had met a worthy man whom she loved with all her heart and was confident in him in every way. John felt the same way and often recalled their unusual acquaintance, which had almost turned into enmity. And on one of the days of such memories, Adriana said to her husband, "You know, I really want to go to the city where I started college. That's where Christina was born. And I promised I'd show you those places. What's the big deal? You promised. You keep your promise. We'll go through this town, especially since we're on our way to your parents' house, and then to my father's, right?" Happily said the woman and kissed her spouse on the lips. And soon the family was already driving a jeep in the town where Christina was born. The woman asked her husband to park the car and walk. The man complied with the request of his beloved, and in a few minutes the family was already standing on the street. Adriana corrected her sundress. Unshaven took Christina under the arm and offered to walk. John took the 4-year-old son by the hand, and they slowly headed down the street. Just then, Adriana heard a loud exclamation, to which she turned around. The woman looked at the man and recognized him as her ex-spouse. She coldly rolled her eyes at him and wanted to continue on her way. But Stephen exclaimed that he was glad for the unexpected meeting and began showering Adriana with compliments and said that he recognized Adriana only by the tattoos she had made for him, and then pointed at Christina and asked, "This is my daughter. Hear that, banker? At one time you took your wife's bored child to the middle of nowhere and left for a mistress. And now, years later, when there was a chance meeting, you decided to pretend to be a father. That's not gonna happen. Christina has been calling my husband, who is standing next to me, Daddy for a long time. And about the tattoo, thank you for reminding me to look at it soon. Now go on your way and forget about us forever."